Portugal, the sailing capital of Portugal, and indeed one of the sailing capitals of the world. Fantastic conditions here. We saw yesterday on day one of the Rolex TP52 World Championships. We saw over 25 knots of breeze. We had some fantastic action, and we saw both Azura and Quantum Racing winning races at the top of the table. It's tied on points. Today we're going to look at windward-leeward race and a short coastal race, so a real challenge for the teams today. It's going to be a long week. We're expecting strong breeze through the week, slightly less today, about 15 knots. I'm joined again by Nick Baird. Nick, your thoughts on the day?
Oh, it's going to be a similar day to yesterday, and so we'll just see if the teams can clean things up a little bit.
Indeed, it's all about execution, we say here. Let's have a look at the highlights. What happened yesterday? Say big breeze, fantastic action, some of the best we've seen for a long time. The third event of the 2018 season is the Rolex TP52 World Championship, and that is the big one. We're here in Cascais. We have 9 boats, all of them brand new, and each with an equal chance of winning the world title. Cascais delivers strong winds on the Atlantic and big waves. Cascais is the hardcore venue. The winners of the World Championship last year in Scarlino were Germany's Platoon, and they're here in Cascais to try and defend their title. And is there more pressure as world champions?
No, I don't think there's any more pressure as world champions. You know, there's plenty of pressure out there on guys like Quantum with Dean driving, and a few other pros out there. They have Luna Rosa. Should be a good battle, I think, between the two America's Cup teams out there.
Race number 1, classic Cascais summer conditions, 17 to 20 knots of breeze from the northwest, and Azura are first to tack away from the start line out to the right, and that allows them to control the group which fight each other out on that right side. At the top mark, it's Azura leading from Provezza, Platoon and Sled in 3rd and 4th. Down the run, most opt to stay left of the run, but Platoon are happy to stay right and go in a more direct route, quicker, and gain up to 3rd. Quantum Racing get from 5th to 2nd down that run, but at the finish Azura get the monkey off their back and win the first race of the season, their first place. 2nd Quantum Racing, 3rd Platoon, and 4th Alegre.
The whole thing, the guys did a really good job sailing the boat very well. We didn't do any mistakes. Looks easy, but you know, any jibes or any jibing at the top mark is a risky maneuver, and you have to keep it all together. So it's not all about tactics, it's about sailing the boat really well in these conditions.
The second race, it is windier at the start, gusting over 20 knots. Luna Rosa start well at the pin end of the line. Quantum Racing 3 boats up from the left end of the line with a good start as well, but Sled are out to the right early and just lead at the top mark, but they're rolled down early on by Quantum Racing and by Alegre. Down the run, Alegre wipe out on the second run and lose out 2nd place to Azura. Through the finish line, 1st Quantum Racing, 2nd Azura, 3rd are Sled. World Championship leaders are Quantum Racing.
That was Champagne Cascais conditions, and I would suspect that's exactly when the fleet and the series committed to coming here. That's why we came. So just an awesome day of yachting, and you know, it was a great way to start the regatta. You know, Azura had a great day as well. They sailed really, really well, and so yeah, can't complain.
The standings then after 2 races: Quantum Racing lead on 3 points, 2nd Azura on 3, 3rd Platoon on 8, and 4th Alegre also on 8 points.
I don't look at the results, never. I just look at the way we sail, and today I'm happy because the whole team sailed very well.
Well, we come to Cascais for strong winds and big waves, and that was a fantastic first day of the Rolex TP52 World Championship. So Santi Langa, they are saying that he really doesn't look at the results, he just thinks about how they sailed, and yesterday Azura had one of their best days, or in fact their best day of the season so far, with a share of the overall lead. So Croatia was a relatively light wind opening to the 52 Super Series. We had 2 regattas and 10 to 11 knots of breeze at the maximum probably. But here coming to Cascais, it's all about the setup for the stronger breezes. We spoke to some of the sailors this morning telling us how they've set up and how important it is.
Well, certainly Croatia in terms of Zadar and Sibenik was pretty light, or light in general. Here Cascais always delivers in terms of 20 to 25 knots. So I would say most boats will be using their AP main, which is a little shorter in the head, longer on the foot, flatter overall. Definitely using smaller, flatter head sails.
Yeah, well, we haven't had a huge amount of time in between regattas with the ship coming from Zadar to Cascais here. So the preparation has been very limited for all the teams. But obviously it's a World Championship, so some new sails. In terms of motoring the boats, obviously the sails are flatter, for the increased wind speeds and the sea states that we experience traditionally here in Cascais. I'm sure, some people have probably considered moving their bulbs aft a little bit. We're all at maximum riding moment VCG within the confines of the class rules, so really there's not too much more that you can do to set the boats up for these windy, wavy conditions.
What's the changes in the setups in terms of sail design and mode changes for here?
Not so much in sail design, it's more just modifying your whole rig plan and how you want to mode the boat for the conditions. So maybe a little straighter mast in the setup and just flatter sail setup basically, but it's the designs haven't changed, it's just how you set the rig up basically.
And what about actually sailing them here in the breeze and the waves? How do you change the mode through the races?
Well, obviously our sails are flatter and a little bit wider sheeting angles on the jibs, and we're sailing a different set of targets for this wind speed and wave state here in Cascais. Downwind we're surfing downwind, so we're pumping the main really hard, pumping the spinnaker sheet hard, and surfing the waves in a bow up mode with the crew further aft. Everyone's hiking further aft in general, obviously, in the breezier conditions, and we monitor rudder angle and cap shroud load and head stay load closely, and everything's wound on pretty hard.
Do you watch what other teams are doing in terms of sail buttoning, or is that important?
Not in terms of sail buttoning, but in terms of what they've got on the boat, we're watching for sure. We know when they put a new sail on anyway, but we're just keeping an eye on them and taking photos as they do to us.
Well, I think we're all just, busy and focusing on our own boats, I think everybody here is wise enough and experienced enough to know what they need to do with their own boat. So, other people, leave it up to them to what they want to do, but we're busy concentrating on ourselves, to be honest.
And you've got 18 sails, was it?
Yeah, 18 sails. I think 16 if you grandfather 3 from the year before. I'm not too sure how many teams do that. It sort of depends on your sail usage from the previous year if you choose to carry over those 3 grandfathered sails. But I'm sure we're 18 with a new boat.
And what about the World Championship itself? Everybody's really raises their game for it, or is it just another regatta?
Well, it's a World Championship at the end of the day. Everyone wants to be a world champion, and this is, I think, in my opinion, the most competitive class in the world. It's out at an extremely high level. There's 9 new boats here competing for a World Championship, and everyone's got their guns out trying to win.
So everyone does have the big guns out. This is the World Championship, and as Chris Hosking from Provezza says, everyone wants to be a world champion. Well, Gustavo Lima is the local hero. He's got 25 years of Olympic sailing under his belt. He did 4 Olympics, 6th, 5th and 4th before he went to London. And we spoke with him this morning to get a clear indication of what the conditions will be like, and more particularly what it's going to be like on the coastal race, which we'll do after the Windward-Leeward. And this was Gustavo this morning on the dock.
Yesterday has been a strong day and people expect it to be again the same, but I see some clouds. It means we will not have the warmer conditions that normally we have in Cascais, so I guess the wind will not be so strong. The crews will have a little bit less work, but I think in terms of conditions in the race course, we might have the same in terms of positioning on the fleet. People think that left sometimes can be strong, but actually not. And but I think it's tiny racing, tough racing, and some teams are doing a good job.
So what's the key today then?
Consistency, I would say. Yeah, have an eye on the right all the time, but just be aware that with these clouds, sometimes the middle left can also play. We have to measure before and make the decision just close to the start.
So that was Gustavo Lima, the local expert, or as he said this morning, I'm local, I'm not an expert, but obviously 25 years of Olympic sailing. He's coaching for the Portuguese team now and is just back from Poland. Nick, you know a little bit about the weather. You're in some of the weather briefings this morning. How does that square with what Gustavo was saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a totally similar day to yesterday, and this is, classic Cascais. You're going to see it every time. So certainly for the windward leeward, we're going to see people doing the same things as they did yesterday. And then when it comes to the coastal, as you get down the coast a little bit, longer courses, they might see a little bit different breeze further away from the shore, so you might see teams maybe going as risky as changing jibs, but we'll see. We'll have to find out. What do you think about the current? There were some talk about the current, and that's going to be a key part of the coastal race in particular, I think. Well, the current forecast this morning, I mean, there's a big river that comes out of Lisbon that causes a bit of a eddy, and there's a normal current flow down the channel, so you get a little bit of mixture. I think right where the windward leeward will be, there shouldn't be much more than wind-driven current, but we'll see. The coastal, it might come into play. And you're obviously quite close with the Phoenix team. What was their feedback yesterday? What was their debrief? Oh well, they would like to have some decisions back, but in general, they look around at other boats. Everyone's having issues. Everybody's it's a difficult sailing out there, so they're not really going to be too hard on themselves. Indeed. So I think a little bit less breeze than yesterday. Yesterday we saw over 25 knots in that second race, and say windward leeward to start with, much the same kind of wind direction we expect to go on time. And it's going to be just a standard windward leeward course, still in this northerly breeze. I think there's 15 knots or so on the race course this morning, or as we go into the start sequence. And it's a standard windward leeward, two upwind legs, 2 downwinds and a finish. And to say yesterday it was all about execution in the breeze. As Nick said, everybody had their problems, I think with the exception really of the top 2 boats. And maybe we'll see a few more in the mix. But very much a one-sided course. That's well known here in Cascais. So that's how the start line looks just now. We're just less than 4.5 minutes before the start, and I wonder whether we can get Jenny Tulloch on the water. Jenny was enjoying the rough conditions yesterday. Hopefully not quite as testing for her today. Jenny?
Yeah, I was absolutely enjoying the conditions yesterday, Andy, and I think probably we're going to see very similar conditions today. It's not quite as windy. At the current moment, we probably only have about 14 knots maybe, but the expectation is going to be that it'll build at least to what we saw in the first race yesterday. But it is sunny and warm again, so it's pretty glamorous out here.
Indeed. So from what we saw yesterday, what do we expect might be the differences? As we've said several times, it was about execution yesterday, and 1 or 2 teams had their problems. Will we see the likes of Luna Rossa coming back into the mix, do you think?
Oh, I absolutely think so. Luna Rossa, they had their hydraulic failure yesterday, which took them out of the first race. We saw Quantum Racing and Azura have a great day with both getting a second and a first. But I think I heard best from Andy Horton at the end of the day yesterday about how this race course actually works. And he sort of said, we all know that the right side is favored, but there's this line, and you can almost see it like a zipper up the course, where the coast and the headland is blocking the wind from the right side. So you have to get out to that right shift, but you can't sail into kind of what yesterday was 12 knots. You could be sailing outside of that in 20 knots. And so the teams that we saw playing that, tacking up the middle, were actually playing this wind line, apparently. And I think that's going to come into play a lot again today. I mean, we're tucked right up next to the coast again. The one thing that's different is the breeze is 10 degrees further left. So maybe we won't be heading quite so far to the right. But I thought that was a really interesting way of explaining exactly how this race course works. And I hope they're all taking it into mind when they're thinking about how to play this first race.
Absolutely. I mean, that's almost exactly what Gustavo Lima was saying, kind of off the record, was that this left side does come into play quite often, and that's what he's here for, as the local expert for the Allegra team. So we'll just wait and see. Otherwise, so how do the setups look for the day?
Well, I think I've got Luna Rossa in front of us here. I think they're probably fired up to have a better day. They're sitting in last on the scoreboard. I again think we said Azura yesterday. They've got a fire in their belly after having 2 bad events so far in the season. So to be able to continue performing at the high level, I think they'll be trying to execute. And then we saw Quantum Racing still almost flawlessly as well. They had a great day. So I think those three teams we could expect to do well, but really it is anyone's game. If anyone starts kind of near the boat and gets out to the right first early, they could be leading just like Sled yesterday and other boats at times. So I've got a special privileged spot today. I'm on the chief umpire's grid, so I should be right in the action if we see any.
That's a privilege.
Situations. Yeah, yeah, you can come to me. I don't know if I'll be able to tell you exactly what I'm hearing, but yeah, at least it should be interesting. It's definitely getting close to the start time now.
Good. No, Nick, what are your thoughts on this this first leg from what we saw yesterday?
Well, with the breeze a little bit further left and quite a bit lighter than it was the second race yesterday, you're going to see the teams, just trying to be a little bit conservative and make sure that they know what's going on. The right side's definitely going to be where they want to go. Pin's probably a little bit favored, as we saw yesterday. If they all, if it wasn't favored, they chose to start at the boat. So you're just going to see them, like we said, a lot of the time yesterday, that it's a battle for the position on the windward ley line from the start on. So they're choosing whether they want to get to the right and play the game and battle with the other boats, or if they want to stay towards the pin, get a little bit of line bias and steer clear of the fleet and hopefully go fast and make their gains that way.
So Jenny, we're just coming into 30 seconds before the start. Take us through the start, please. Just losing Jenny a little bit, just at 20 seconds. We're seeing Quantum racing towards the left of the group, clearly starting closer towards the pin. A little bit of sag in the middle of the group there, Nick.
Yeah, it's always hard to tell exactly where you are on the line. Like we said yesterday, they've got the navigator boxes, but they're not always right.
So just on the gun then, Quantum starting just to leeward of Luna Rossa. Next up is Provezza, all starting alongside each other.
Looks a lot lighter today, almost J2 conditions on the head sails.
So there you see Luna Rossa starting beside Quantum Racing. Luna Rossa just have a little bit of an advantage off the line. Francesco Bruni, the helmsman, on Luna Rossa with Vasco Vascotto calling tactics. Quite liking the position just now of Azura. Azura also quite a good start forward on Platoon.
Yeah.
Up to the windward end of the line, we've got Sled. Started there in the second race yesterday and were the first to flip away, but obviously so far nobody's been keen to flip into the right, towards the right corner.
I bet with the little bit of lighter breeze, it's meant to build, it's predicted to build, but right now you can see it's quite a bit lighter than it was yesterday. And the teams are going to be looking for pressure as opposed to shift when they've got small pressure like that. So we'll probably see them sail into that left pressure that you can get a little further away, and then start playing the game towards the right side in flatter water.
Yeah, Jenny, we've got you back. Just to give us a quick evaluation of the start then. What did you see? No, just lost Jenny, unfortunately. So yeah, at the moment the leaders on our virtual eye are Provezza just to windward of the main group to the left and slightly forward off Platoon. Looks quite bouncy for the wind pressure in that shot. But Dean Barker just trying to get up to start hurting Luna Rossa. We're overlapped with Provezza there to windward. Probably three of the best drivers in the world alongside each other there. Dean Barker and Francesco Bruni, and then Peter Holmberg. And trying to hold his own there just to weather Harmuller Spreer on the Platoon. Platoon not such a good day as the world champions yesterday.
Yeah, Platoon, we saw them make good gains on the downwind, but they had
first race,
struggled some at the ley line calls and maybe not so great at starts, so it was a bit of a challenge for them to get up into the top group. But they certainly managed to do it on boat speed, so we'll see if they can make their way out of this situation here.
In the meantime, Azura fifth on the water, but actually not too bad a position relative to the boats to weather of them, Nick. And also they don't have a bad lane there at all, really, in terms of positioning in the fleet.
No, well, you only see 2 or 3 boats starting to fall back here, and it'd be interesting to see why some of these boats haven't started attack yet. Certainly they're seeing something that wants them to keep on the starboard end.
Just on what Jenny was saying, I think perhaps we're playing this more pressure out on this left side. For sure, I think that's what Terry and Dean Barker and Ian Moore on the Quantum Racing are looking for. coming off the pin, dragging out to this left side, along with Luna Rossa, Provezza, Allegri. Good day yesterday, two fourth places, lying fourth overall, tied on points with Platoon. Their best day of the season so far, in terms of consistency anyway. And they were just seeing Platoon having to tack off out of that position. We're seeing Onda there to the left of the shot, tacking out to the right. And we're seeing Quantum Racing leading on virtual just now, Jenny.
Yeah, I think a couple of us have had to check out Onda, Allegri, and then Platoon doing a huge duck here. I mean, a really, really unfortunate duck. And they've just gotten faced by Sled, so we might even see a flag here. In fact, I'm seeing a red flag right now. Chuck is sticking with his hands up. I think we're seeing a green flag from our boat, right? So Sled just gave Platoon a really close face slant. Platoon went to avoid, and then is tacking off now. So they will be able to have kind of this weather hit position of the fleet going to the left. But it makes sense to me that right now Quantum's leading. They were they had a great start and they're leading off the left. They haven't tacked yet. So we'll see if the right comes into play a bit later on. The first boat to tack off to the right without being forced is Azura.
So we're just a quick shot on board there with Platoon, Harmuller Spear and the team there lying in 9th place in this race according to virtual.
Yeah, well, I bet that big duck's going to hurt them. And
yeah,
you know, the trick is that if you start down the line and you have a bad start, it's really difficult to get out, because as you tack and duck those boats, I mean, boats like Sled are going to tack in front of you 9 times out of 10 just to keep you from getting leverage to that right side.
There's also just going across the dirty air, the exhaust of the boats, which are still on starboard. Anyway, Luna Rossa looking quite good there as well, going across the front of Platoon. I think you would say with Luna Rossa, with the greatest respect, this is more about process than results, isn't it? You know, they didn't have a good opening regatta in Šibenik. They obviously came back in Zadar, but this is for them. They're an America's Cup team, and it's about building the team, and it's not necessarily about winning the circuit. So yesterday, I think, was a key day in that respect, Jenny.
You know, I think these are all key days, especially because it's the first time they've really raced hard in Breeze. You know, and we all know the communication and everything is very different in Breeze than it is in Leidar. You don't have the time to really massage your thought process or your communication with the team. Sometimes things are happening so quickly that it just has to get out and get done, and the quicker that everyone can get on the same page with things, the better. So all these teams, whether they're training for the Cup or not, will be happy to have this time in better pressure this week.
Absolutely, but I mean, that was key yesterday with Luna Rossa, was having that breakdown in the morning, be able to sort it and be ready for the second race, and be competitive, or as competitive as it could be. So Quantum Racing leading from Luna Rossa, Provezza up there in 3rd. 5 in the 9 yesterday, Provezza. Second race was not good for them. They had technical problems. So they're in the hunt today. Certainly a little bit less wind. We're only 15 knots or so on board now with Luna Rossa.
Yeah, compared to yesterday, 15 knots looks like 8 knots.
It does, doesn't it? It looks quite tame.
But here we are back with the boat speed race out to the right corner, and you know, certainly there's going to be less pressure over there, and that's you gotta say that's probably why a lot of the boats are staying on starboard, and you know, Luna Rossa going quick here on port tack. These guys, at this point, it's all about speed, and like we were saying yesterday, it's about gaining a boat length here or there to see if that can help you at the battle, you know, for spots around that windward mark. Yep. So this is exactly where the teamwork comes into play, and certainly in other aspects, but big communication right now between the helmsman and the tactician and the main trimmer about, you know, adjusting small things here and there. And there's so many controls on these boats, and they're constantly being changed to make the boat go faster. And so they've got all these numbers, electronics on board that they're reading. It has to be really easily communicated between all the key players on the upwind.
So Jen, how's this upwind looking? If anything, I kind of feel that Quantum might be lifting slightly on this tack. And I wonder whether JK, John Kostecki, seen anything out on this left side. They've gone right out to the left, obviously forced out there to a point, but it's looking quite good for Quantum.
To my eye, yeah, it looks like Platoon just got shoved and ping-ponged around a little bit. It looks to me like they're quite far behind, so I think they're hoping for something from the left. And perhaps Quantum is getting a lift, but as I look up the course, it looks like there's better breeze sort of middle, maybe even middle top right. So if Quantum can carry that lift all the way across to the right, maybe trying to extend, but I think ultimately they're just trying to get across the fleet on the right, and that'll be interesting as to whether they get the breeze first. Really, I want to say possibly Azura in the middle is going to gain the most from where this looks like this pressure is coming down.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that surprising to see the lead, change a little bit as we come up towards the top mark, especially with right shifts, right pressure. If you're Quantum or Luna Rossa right now, you're probably trying to put the bow down pretty hard and get over those boats to the right of you and see if you can secure your lead.
That's right, but having that option is what it's about, and certainly both these boats have done well to give themselves that option. Whereas Allegri and Onda are very committed into that corner.
Well, you're also likely seeing a bit of the line bias that they all came off the starting line. These boats, I mean, it's such a competitive fleet, all the 9 new boats all this year, and everyone's such similar speeds that you can tell they came off the line a little bit pin favored, and we'll just have to see if the right shift ends up coming into play and bringing those boat end boats back into the mix. Just
on that, Nick, you're saying 9 boats, all of them new. Had 12 boats at the start of the season. Just explaining the other 3 boats. Well, Gladiator elected not to do this regatta because they have commitments in the States. One of their 3 52s that they have, they're racing just now, and that was a commitment they made earlier on. Chio were only ever going to do the one regatta. They have a very limited budget, and our French colleagues on the Paprec will be back towards the end of the season. So this is really the hardcore of the fleet, the 9 new boats, but these other boats are still very much in the mix, and we do believe that Gladiator will be back with us in Portals next month, as keen and hungry as ever, and they're probably doing as much sailing in terms of time on the water as anybody, so it would be worth watching for them in Portals next month. So meantime, Jenny, Quantum racing with the lead over Luna Rossa and Azura. Luna Rossa splitting the top 2 boats on the leaderboard at this Rolex TP52 World Championship in day number 2. Saw Vasco Vascotto and Jimmy Spithill in a very earnest conversation at breakfast this morning. They never stopped discussing and debriefing and throwing ideas back and forwards. And just now, if anything, they're just a little bit quicker than Quantum. They've gained very slightly. Jimmy Spithill sailing as strategist and working well now with Vasco Vascotto.
Yeah, well, you might see some of that, some of that distance loss that Quantum had. It could be this right shift starting to come into play.
Yeah.
And it'd be really interesting to see if these boats that, I mean, you see the leaderboard changing a lot. Platoon was up there in 4th or 5th for a while, and now they're way back. I think that definitely, with the leverage that Platoon has out to the left, you're definitely seeing that right side starting to come in here.
Yeah.
So like Jenny said, Azura is going to be in a great spot. Onda, Allegre, going to have pretty good starts. And Onda, remember at the beginning, Onda was, in a tough position in tacking and ducking the fleet, and now they're leading the fleet to the right and right back into the mix. So
yeah,
certainly options, even if you're looking at sterns for a while.
The question for them is when they tack, do they go? They'll need to try and go just under ley line or out to ley line.
Well, one of the questions is, can they tack in front of Allegre?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's difficult. It's hard for us to see from the studio, Andy. But like we said yesterday, if you find yourself in that position where you're leading a couple of boats, then you're happy to tack early and start messing with people and push the fleet back.
So on board with the Platoon again. Unfortunately, starting to see most of the fleet under the bow. Under the boom. Well forward of them.
Yeah, these guys had a tough decision to make. You know, only a few boats got squeezed out of the initial lineup, and their choice was to sail in a difficult lane out to the right side or attack and go in clear air. And we saw them yesterday with those downwinds. They prefer the clear air route and prefer to try to use their speed. And I think when it's a little bit lighter, maybe the shift and the pressure difference matters more. And so you might see this right side paying off a little bit more than it did yesterday.
So as you say, the balance changing at the top of the fleet all the time, tipping between Azura, Luna Rossa and Quantum Racing. There's just nothing between them.
Yeah, not surprising there. And like Jenny said, you know, Azura might be in the best pressure here. And, you know, just getting a little bit, probably I would imagine their compass numbers are going down a degree or two, and you're starting to see a lot of these boats tack. Feeling lifted, feeling good. You know, Honda, like we said, coming from not a great start, getting to that right side and really making big gains. So certainly a right favored, you know, leg, and more so than yesterday, it seems.
Indeed. So Honda have tacked, Allegra have tacked out on that right side. Honda have already gained one place since they tacked, and they have Allegra underneath them, watching Azura going across. Now will they cross in front of Allegra and Honda?
You know, out on the water, we sort of just had the moment of truth. It was sled to tack first from the right-hand side. They came in through the middle. They forced Prevent to tack. Luna Rossa just crossed their bow, and Quantum couldn't make it. So Quantum actually has had to tack out underneath sled while Luna Rossa leads. And then now just in front of us coming into the next lineup is Luna Rossa and Azura. And I'm telling you, the guys are coming off the side now on Luna Rossa. So they're going for a very early lead out to Azura. So they did not think that they had that cross. And I don't think any of these boats are quite ley line yet, except maybe Honda out there. Actually.
I think Honda probably are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it'll be a difficult positioning for Luna Rossa here if they don't lay. Then there's not much distance to be able to tack and duck. So I think they're probably going for hoping that they're going to lay and going into pinch mode, and maybe that's why they gave themselves a little distance between them and Azura.
And Luna Rossa tacking underneath them. And it's move and counter move with the group to leeward.
Yeah, well, you definitely it's easy to get lost. Well, maybe not lost, but it's easy to get involved in these small tactical battles and really fight it out with one boat. And while 4 or 5 are gaining, you know, away from you on the ley line,
isn't it? You've got that group to the right, you've got the group to the left, which are just the group to the left are just dragging for the mark, and this group to the left. So Quantum prevents a sled.
You know, and if you're in Quantum's position, then you're sort of hoping that you know, these boats are maybe not on ley line, have one more tack to go, or that you can gain a little bit on speed out this other side and be able to sneak in there. But you know, you're definitely, if you're Terry Hutchison out there, thinking there's a lot of risk being out on this side as these boats go and start to set up on ley line. If there's a hole for Quantum, Phoenix, you know, if those boats are going to be able to sneak in at the mark.
Meantime, Honda just increasingly coming into the mix out on the most right side boat looking upwind.
Yeah, well, you see them starting to back up a little bit on Azura and Luna Rossa. It looks like they might actually be on ley line, onto maybe pressing against our jib and losing a little bit there as they, you know, sail 5 degrees lower than
Jenny,
the Italian boats below.
Jenny, we're just looking at Quantum. What are your thoughts on Quantum's position coming into this top mark?
You know, I think they're going to struggle here. We're just underneath Luna Rossa. It does look like their bow is laying the mark. So Quantum tucking up through. We know earlier they weren't able to cross sled when Luna Rossa was able, so they were behind at that point. And there's not a lot of gap behind Luna Rossa and Azura and Honda. There's a tiny bit of a gap maybe in front of Allegra. So if Quantum can pull it off with their 2 taps, then that I would be aiming for if I was them. Maybe they're hoping that they got one final left shift and they'll actually come in top here in front of Luna Rossa, but I think that's going to be a really hard task to ask for.
Yeah, well, you know, if anybody can execute it, it's going to be that team, right, Andy?
Exactly. So here they are tacked and coming across. Looks like there may just be an option for them.
Well, the hope is certainly that teams like Honda and Azura are hurting you know, Allegre enough that there becomes a space at the end.
Yeah, I think they'll be okay, but they're going to be going in third or fourth, I think, coming around the top mark. And it's between Azura and Luna Rossa. Training partners, Jenny, talk us round the mark then. Luna Rossa inside boat, Azura outside.
Exactly. Luna Rossa beautifully pulling it together after a bad day yesterday with the 10 and a 6. So taking the lead from the middle left early in the race. Pretty consistently happy there. And then Azura up from the middle of the race course, looking good. Had a great day yesterday. Of course, tied at the top of the leaderboard right now at just 3 points. And behind them, Ondo, which we saw struggle yesterday. I don't think we ever saw them in the top 3. So great to see the Brazilian team here. They were one of the teams forced out early to the right. I think it's about the most interesting top mark that we've had to see the top 3 boats come from the 3 very different positions on the race course. I think that means good things for the rest of the week about how tricky this race course can actually be. And Quantum Racing, of course, pulling off this 4th position from what was almost the furthest left place on the race course. Behind them in 5th place, Allegre. And Allegre is tied for 3rd right now still overall. They had a great day yesterday with 2 fourths, but they were in better positions than that throughout the race. So expecting good things again from Andy Soriano. Behind Allegre in 6th position is Bow number 6. That sled, again, had another good day yesterday, but it just had a tear in their kite that dropped them from 3rd to 8th in one of the races. So a bit unfortunate. Behind them, Phoenix is in 7th place. 8th place is Provetza, and unfortunately for Platoon, they're being ping-ponged up the middle early in that start has dropped them down to 9th place. So as we look down the course, 3 teams have jived. Honda, Quantum Racing, Sled, a 4th team behind them, Phoenix, going right into the early jive as well, as is Provetza. I think this is going to be based on breeze. They must be assuming that there's a little bit more breeze on that right-hand side, because I don't think we saw any major right shifts right at the end, but we have seen almost the last 4 boats all go for the jive set.
Yeah, they must have also likely seen a lift on starboard, making them want to go on to port right away. I mean, you definitely see that breeze change as you go down the line, or as you go down the course, but like Jenny said, very likely pressure-oriented here. I mean, you see that these guys are taking the jib down, putting staysails up. I mean, it's much lighter out here, so they're going to be looking for, and it's forecast to increase, so definitely going to be big differences in pressure potentially out there. And so they're going to be looking for enough breeze to surf maybe these big swells, or maybe even get on a plane if it gets up that much.
So just the 3 boats staying out in the right, Azura, Allegre and Sled, isn't it, going downwind, Jen?
No, it's Luna Rossa, Azura, and Allegre.
Yeah.
So the top 2 boats still 1st and 2nd, and then Allegre rounded about 5th. And I think Azura had a really interesting rounding. They seemed like they had gained some speed on Luna Rossa. Maybe they had a better kite set, and they kind of had Luna Rossa as the brick in the way in front of them, and they had to dive really deep to not hit them. And then they sort of had to come really high up afterwards to regain speed. And so instead of rolling over the top or gaining out of it, they've kind of lost a boat length overall from that maneuver. But early on, it was such a big gain for them to then actually end up a boat length behind. But both of those boats now, as they're rolling into the jive, and Luna Rossa matching them simultaneously in front. But Sled, or Allegre behind, does not look to be going to jive at all yet.
No, we're just on board with them momentarily, just with Andy Soriano on the team. Good day yesterday with 2 fourths, presently lying 4th again. I'm sure they'll be quite happy with that. We saw they're back on board with them.
They did go for the jive right after I said it. Didn't look at all like they were going to. Luna Rossa had a really poor jive as well in front. So that boat length that I was talking about earlier for Azura behind it, it's narrowed down to about a quarter of a boat length, because Azura had quite a beautiful jive. Allegre's jive looked really nice as well, kite full and flying soon thereafter.
And they seem to appear to have quite a good angle out on this right side, looking downwind to Luna Rossa and Azura. If anything, going into a little bit of a knock, do you think?
You know, the angle, yeah, it looks not only like it's knocking, but
and more pressure.
We just turned our boat to line up with them as well. No, we're surfing these ocean swells. So the umpire boat is doing it, and the boats are doing it. And Luna Rossa's just surfed a swell that took them about 2 boat lengths ahead of Azura. Now Azura's caught on one and catching up. But this is This is
about
a
the
much
swell.
better direction for the swell. And I think maybe if I can't tell from eye, but maybe Virtual Eye has the boats inshore gaining early, but it might have just been that they were surfing the swell earlier. And when they jibe over, they're then going to have the jibe that's not as good for the swell. So this jibe will always be today. It feels like will always be the better jibe because it's so much lighter than yesterday. You are actually surfing these swells for about, maybe this is a 7-second surf, and then it just passes under you, and they feel like huge, big 6-foot ocean swells, even though there's not a lot of wind here. So this is going to be all about which teams can just execute the downwind sailing the best.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pumping on board today, and you can see that main coming in hard and the kite coming in with it. You know, grinders going to be working a lot harder today than they were yesterday. Well, yesterday they were hiking hard, but today they'll be trimming a lot harder. Definitely a lot of action on the sails, and smooth steering is going to help all that. And you know, so like Jenny said, these waves can make a difference 2 or 3 boat lengths if you miss one. And that could mean 5 or 6 places at the bottom mark, especially with a fleet this tight.
So Vasco Viscotto, their tactician on the Luna Rossa. Typical pose for him. He never ever stands still. He's always looking round and about, watching the pressure and the rest of the fleet, seeing what's happening. As Jimmy Spithill is a strategist.
So it will be interesting to see. Virtual's got on to making good gains on that inshore side, so it'll be really interesting to see how they go. And Luna Rossa look not quite as fast as Azura do next to them. A little bit of an excitement there, a little bit of luff by Luna Rossa. What do you see out there, Jenny?
A lot of excitement here. You could see that coming, so Vasco sort of ran to the back of the boat and then started hiking like he was stressed out. The boat didn't really respond the way that he wanted necessarily. No one else came to hike with him. It was like he was the only bodyweight hiking. And then all of a sudden, Azura caught up to them on the wave that they were on, and the only place to go was to weather. And Luna Rossa responded by defending with a luff as well. But you could see Vasco get really emotional, kind of give Azura the wave, and now they've caught the wave, and Azura fell off the back of it, and they're back to this 1.5 boat length gap. But that was it. I mean, I think that'll happen again. They are so close, and it's just really who can stick on that wave that tiniest bit longer, and that one it looked like Azura played it out a bit better.
Certainly this drone shot, they're looking good against the fleet on that on their left side. Small gain perhaps to Platoon after that 9th place at the top mark. Small gain.
Well, they passed the boat. That's good,
Exactly.
according to the virtual. But yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to see that, like, if Jenny, you know, if it's really that much faster on port, which I imagine it is with the swell angle, then these guys, this is where the gain is going to be made for boats like Azura, Alegre, and Luna Rossa, is being able to surf these waves now in front of the starboard tack boats coming along, and then choose the perfect tactical position to come into the mark.
Interesting talking with Santi Lang after yesterday's racing, where he was saying that obviously the guys on the Azura have done quite a bit more sailing on these offshore courses, as it were, than he has. So he listens to their intelligence and their knowledge, and he makes the decisions. But they have very much more experience out on these courses. Obviously, Santi's been here many times for Olympic races or Olympic regatta races.
Well, for sure, having a strategist is very helpful for a lot of these tacticians. And I can tell you, Andy, from my experience on sailboats, dinghy, you know, you sail very different places in dinghies, and any keel boats, it seems similar, and the tactical aspects are similar. But there's a lot more that's going on and very complicated, you know, boat handling maneuvers
and to be
take a
fair,
long time.
as he said in the clip yesterday, was really about how you sailed the boat rather than
exactly
small scale tactics.
So there's you know, there's a lot more going on these big boats than there are on the little ones. So it's sometimes, you know, you've got to adapt to that, and you know, it's definitely smart to listen to the advice of the other experts out here. These guys are all really good at their jobs.
Jenny, perhaps a small gain down that left side to Provezza as the furthest left boat. I think they went round the top mark in 8th. We're seeing them in 4th coming down this latter stages of this run.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the left side has gained altogether. We just saw a convergence between Onda and Azura as well, which Azura jibed in front. I think they were clean across. They chose to jibe so that they probably have clean air later on. But Onda's definitely closed down the gap. You know, their third at the top mark was about 2 or 3 boat lengths back, and their third place now to Azura is only about 1 boat length. So for Onda to have been the furthest out left and make that gain, it makes sense that Provezza, who was sort of right in the mix with the 5th to 9th place boats, has caught up. And it looks like Provezza's actually just crossed Quantum Racing and Allegra, in fact. So Azura making, Provezza making a huge gain there. That's a great
interesting to see.
Because they didn't have a fabulous day yesterday.
Yeah, we were just watching Francesca Mongelli, the navigator on the Luna Rossa, just keeping a bearing on Azura, and they've come right into this left side as well for the approach to the mark. Azura there just in front of Onda on 3rd, Provezza 4th, Quantum dropping from 4th to 5th since the top mark. And the advantage in terms of the World Championship leadership is with Azura in the meantime. But just looking at this drone shot, Azura in good pressure just now, Nick, as indeed are Onda. There seems to be light pressure right over to that left side.
Yeah, I mean, one comment I was going to make anyways was that, you see some boats gaining from each side and some boats losing from each side, so it's very possible that it's quite puffy out there, and there's not necessarily one better place to go, and it's just going to be about micromanaging, whether you're in pressure and putting the bow down or not in pressure and, finding that next puff.
And the wave pattern as well, and using that. So we're just seeing a nice shot of Onda and Azura jibing side by side. A better jibe, in fact, by Onda as we come in towards the gate. Onda pretty slick. Luna Rossa still leading by 60 or 70 metres. Led round the top mark. And Jenny, take us through this leeward gate if you're in position.
Yeah, Luna Rossa is leading. In fact, they have extended their lead massively just in that final little bit there.
Just going over to the left.
Left-hand mark going to the right-hand side of the course, which I think is probably the conservative move. We don't necessarily know which side of the course is paying because the top 3 came from all different sides last time. But I think in a couple ways, the biggest loser there, just at the very end, was Azura, because they got Onda behind them, caught a good wave and jibed on it, and Azura sort of defensively jibed without a wave. So they got some bad air from Onda for a while, but they've rounded the opposite mark to Luna Rossa. They're heading to the left-hand side of the course, and because they came up the middle last time, that makes sense as well. Now, Onda, unfortunately for Robert Scheidt, he
just losing Jenny. I think she's just saying that Onda have lost just a little bit coming into the mark and having to follow Azura out. And we're just watching Provezza attacking at the left-hand mark, looking upwind.
Yeah, that was a bit of a quick tack by them. I mean, they had to get the bow over and onto close haul before Platoon came down, otherwise they might foul. So they threw the tack over. You see Platoon having to duck low, and you can see it on the tracker. Their path ducking way low and dropping the kite and then coming around the mark. So going to be...
So Azura attacking relatively early after the mark, ahead of Onda. And Luna Rossa opting for the right, having gone to the left mark, looking downwind, right mark looking upwind, and staking a claim to that right side.
Yeah, well, I think that the right side certainly paid. I mean, you saw Onda come from not the greatest start and moving right back into the top of the group. And, boats like Quantum, Luna Rossa, Azura all came from that left side. I think it has a lot to do with a little bit of line bias, maybe, better speed, better pressure. But you could definitely see those boats that were far right gaining as the leg went on. So I wouldn't be surprised to see all these boats trying to get towards that side now.
So Jenny, your overall picture then, since the leeward mark, where's the advantage to be gained? Jenny?
Come again, Andy.
I'm just saying your overall picture since the leeward gate. What's your feeling? Luna Rossa leading out to the right side. Azura went a little bit further and staying more left. At the moment, Azura seemed to have made a small gain, of anything.
I think there's just the cool part about sailboat racing is it's not as obvious as it seems. We've just kept calling this course such a right-sided race course.
No, of course.
And that's definitely not that. So there's a good puff line here in the middle, just behind Azura. We are actually tailing Azura by about 1 boat length ourselves. And I feel like they're just, as Andy was describing yesterday, they're the inside of the zipper of Breeze. And perhaps Luna Rossa, Quantum, and even Preveza and Allegra have just sailed out of this a tiny bit. And so if Azura is making gains, it's just because they're in the tiniest bit more pressure. And Luna Rossa hasn't decided whether now's the time to tack up, because they haven't really gotten the right shift yet that they'd want to gain from the right-hand side. So it's difficult when you're on the outside of the tuff to decide whether it's worth it to do extra maneuvers and sail into the tuff. And I think Azura just lucked out or was excellent in making the right call about rounding the proper mark to get into the pressure first, and that's why they're making this gain.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch and see how they go along as the upwind continues. Definitely puffy out there. I mean, you could see that, like we said, on the downwind.
Yeah.
Definitely a bit of pressure up there, and it takes quite a bit of foresight. You got to look way up, miles up the race course to tell, because like Jenny said, you don't want to do too many maneuvers in this condition, and so you're trying to predict 5 minutes ahead of time where the pressure is going to be.
Yeah, when you look upwind, there's a big valley on the high right, and that tends to funnel the breeze further up the course and gives you a little bit of this starboard tack lift further up the course. But it's also all to do with the different temperature differences at this stage in the day, and there's still some pockets of colder air up in the higher areas, and you still have the breeze wrapping round the point out to the left side. So all these variables changing all the time, and as you say, making the getting a better shot there. You can just see the headland and the orientation of the course, and say the breeze wraps around the headland, and you over on the right side you have a big flat channel, a flat valley to the right side, and that channels the air down the right side of the course, and it gives you some of that starboard tack lift as well as the influence of the land. But it's a very interesting race course, and it's not, as you say, just as simple as bang the right side and pick up the starboard tack lift.
Well, sure, and if you look at that's the micro picture. If you look at the macro picture, you've got some big pressure differentials that are causing this breeze to funnel in the bigger picture of things, and so maybe you see a little bit higher pressure above the race course now than the weather forecast might have predicted, and that's going to make things be a little bit spottier because the breeze has.
And certainly in general, it's not as warm as yesterday. It's cloudier, and the thermal enhancement is not as significant.
So, but looks like good gains for the left-hand boats,
as we were saying.
Yeah. So. A bit surprising that you've got these left-hand boats making gains, but like Jenny said, very much could be the pressure differences out there. These strategists and tacticians looking upwind, picking the right lanes to the right side. I mean, all the boats clearly want that right-hand side, but the question is, what's the fastest way to get there?
Jenny, how's it looking?
It's looking good still. I think Luna Rossa maybe has made a slight more gain recently than earlier expected. The breeze line is still all gates out here in the middle left of the course. The difference today compared to yesterday is we have a lot more cloud coverage all together. So way offshore, it's a bright blue sunny day. But over us, and especially over the right-hand side of the course, we have much more cloud layer than we did yesterday. Yesterday we kind of only had clouds over the mountains, which is such a typical low-pressure sea breeze scenario. And today it's a bit more gradient affecting it. Maybe it's why we don't have quite the 20 knots that we're expecting. It's also maybe why we're seeing slightly bigger shifts and bigger holes and puffs than we thought. But I think it makes it harder to see the breeze on the right side as well. So it might look like there's pressure on the right, but actually it's just the shadow of the clouds. And on the left, where there is sunlight, the dark water is definitely breeze. So I think Azura's still sailing in the most breeze behind them as well. But Luna Rossa, I don't know what Virtual Eye's telling you guys. Luna Rossa starting to get the right shift. Maybe we'll have made that big gain once they tack over and they're on a lift on starboard.
Yeah, we're just looking at live images just now from the water rather than Virtual Eye, and that certainly looks the possibility for Luna Rossa out on that furthest out to the right. That's clearly what Vasco and Jimmy Spithill are looking for in terms of their positioning.
We didn't see the gains on the right side until very late in the leg last time. Could be shifts. I bet a lot of it is flat water. It could even be some current that we're not seeing out there. There's lots and lots of climate impacts on the way that this race course works. So it will be interesting to see as they go up. I mean, certainly Phoenix and Platoon out there on the left side, like Platoon was last time, didn't work out so well. Those guys are hoping it might work this time.
Certainly we're seeing Phoenix, we did see Phoenix move up the leaderboard momentarily, but as you say, trying something out on this left side.
Well, trying something out might just be getting clear air. It's hard to find lanes. Like we said, it's difficult to find a lane to the right side, and Platoon had that difficult decision in the first leg. Do we go to the right side and fight in difficult lanes, or do we take an easier lane out there but give up some leverage? And it didn't work out to give the leverage, so we'll see if that's a loser on this leg as well.
Luna Rossa seemed to have some pressure there anyway. We're just on board with them. Set up on starboard now.
Yeah, so Luna Rossa finally finding that shift that Jenny was talking about. They're looking for maybe tacking back into this pressure line, back into the a little bit more breeze and trying to be a little conservative and bring it back towards the fleet, consolidate their gains.
Jenny, we're just looking at Quantum Racing just to windward and behind Luna Rossa. Now they're 5th. What's really big picture? What's been going on with them in this race?
It looks like they're maybe about to be 6th. They're getting leave out by Preveza as we speak. So Quantum either is going to be able to hang there and roll over the top, or is going to have to do 2 tacks quickly.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure where they lost it. We saw them.
They just lost on the top of that first beat by buying to the left of the main group, didn't they? And just couldn't get into the starboard tack lineup. I mean, they're certainly in the mix.
So here's Luna Rossa going back towards that right side. They're not feeling great about having Azura and Quantum over there. Just getting back to that pressure line and then going right back to the other side. We see them on board trying to execute the stack as well as they can, because 20 boat length loss could mean not crossing Azura here, or 20 meter loss.
Yeah. Certainly seem to have crossed Azura anyway.
Maybe they weren't. Maybe they're on leyline or close to leyline and just not quite sure they were on there and wanted to make sure that they were before the other boats were able to get right. Maybe they're trying to push Azura back here. I mean, there's lots of things they could be trying to do right now. What's your perspective, Jenny? You think they're how close are we getting to that starboard leyline? It might help us see the picture a little bit better here.
We're definitely getting up there, so it makes sense to me at this point that Luna for sending Azura out to the ley line, because if they can send them out and then have the final hit, then they've got the longest amount of time to give them the most bad air. And they also then force Azura to make that ley line call first, and they're capable of then choosing whether to tack below them or past them based on Azura's ley line. So Luna Rossa just playing a little bit of match racing defense here as they come up towards the top mark. Underneath Luna Rossa, Preveza doing a great job today. You guys certainly moved up all the way into what is maybe 3rd position, maybe 4th compared to Honda. I think yesterday they had a little incident, and the owner hit his head as well, so he's not on board today. We don't see Jürgen Imre, so a bit of a crew change here, but it's looking good for these guys at the moment. I think even they maybe task Honda underneath. It looks like if Honda was to tack up, they would have to duck. So the kind of fight for at the moment is between that 3rd place. Because I think Luna Rossa is pretty solidly into 1st, and I think Azura is probably pretty solidly into 2nd. Whether Quantum Racing can get back into the mix out from that right-hand corner will be interesting as well. So when Preveza and Honda tack up, that'll be the boat they're aiming for.
Yeah, so late gains from the right, like we saw in the last leg, Andy, and we've got them all the boats looking for the clean lane.
That having if you like learned from the previous upwind, then Quantum have got themselves out to the right early and staying a little bit more conservative. But Luna Rossa, as Jenny said, a pretty solid lead over Azura, Preveza and Honda in the balance.
Yeah, and like we said yesterday about putting pressure on the boats around you, I mean, certainly the boats behind want to put pressure on the boats ahead to do everything perfectly. Quantum in a great spot right now to put a lot of pressure on Preveza and on Honda, to execute things just right. Otherwise, they're going to be in a difficult spot with Quantum on starboard, nailing that ley line, looks like.
But kudos to Provetsa then. Provetsa went round that top mark, first time up in 8th place, now in 3rd. Challenging Honda and Quantum Racing just behind them. And really in 8th just now, the world champions Platoon.
Yeah, Platoon just trying to make their way back up through this. I mean, it's really hard in a one-sided venue, to find those clean lanes and to find the ability to get out to the side that's paying. And certainly, it's one of those situations where the boats that are ahead get further ahead, and the boats that are behind get further behind. And Platoon was able to catch up a lot on the downwinds, but yesterday was a totally different condition, planing and much more breeze. So we'll see if they can manage to do it again today.
Yeah, just you're able to pull back distance quicker in the breeze, obviously, and with the bigger waves. This is a little bit more of a tactical day. Looking at Phoenix and Platoon across the bows there. So overall, big picture looking quite good for Azura then, in terms of the World Championship leaderboard. Tide going onto the water for this first race of the day, day number 2 of the Rolex TP52 World Championship here in Cascais. Azura twice world champions in the past, well, once as Matador, once as Azura, and the 2017 52 Super Series champions.
Yeah, well, certainly a good team, and got a little bit of crew switches with some of the crew going to Luna Rosa, but always going to be up there in the top group. These guys, whether it takes them a couple of events to get there, it doesn't matter. They're always going to be a contender in the 52 series, and so they're a great boat. Wouldn't be surprised to see them do well.
So Allegra a little bit up and down in this race. They were up in 4th and dropping just now to 6th. We're on board with them. Andy Soriano, hugely experienced owner driver, very, very committed to the class and to his program. He was, I think, the first owner to commit to a new boat for this season. And going into this race was lying in 4th on equal points with Platoon. 2 4th places yesterday. A little bit of work to do to get through the Quantum and up to Provetsa, who's to hold that record. So looking at the top mark, second time up, Jenny. We're watching Luna Rossa and Azura approaching. Sister ships built out of the same mould. Azura first on the water, Luna Rossa on the water quite a lot later. Last boat to be launched this season. But they're first on the water just now as they approach the top mark.
Did a fabulous job there. I mean, they hit Azura early on. They forced Azura to do a double tack, and then they just stayed and waited patiently for the right shift, and the right shift came in, and it meant that they were actually laying that whole time. So Azura had to do 2 extra tacks to sort of reach in from way too far out. The same with Quantum Racing. I mean, ultimately, Quantum Racing is down on Azura's line as well, so they've sailed a ton of extra distance. Provetsa then has made major advance here, just Lee bowing Quantum Racing here, so have moved solidly up into 3rd if they can hold Quantum off behind them. A great downwind leg and upwind leg for the Turkish boat. And then Quantum Racing, they were in 3rd at the top mark. They dropped down to almost 5th or 6th. So using that right side, that early right to their advantage, as you said, Andy, getting them back into a little bit better of a playing field. They'll take it 4th place. It's not going to put them in the lead, or Azura will not have the lead, but it will keep them in the game. And actually, they're
but good work from Provetsa.
Yeah, they're only 7 feet behind Provetsa, so we know that they can chase on this final downwind of this race. And then Honda, unfortunately, they dropped down a little bit there. They've gotten all the way up to 2nd, almost by the bottom mark, but they just weren't able to execute and to get past Azura. So instead, they floundered a little bit between the 2 marks. They then had to round the right mark after all, and I think that was ultimately the disappointment, with rounding right and going to the left side of the course, let Quantum and Provetsa get by them. And then behind Honda, we've got Allegra, and I think they've just not been able to execute nearly as well today as they were yesterday. So they are keeping the back markers behind them, but they're not really making major moves forward. And then Platoon, who rounded, I think, 9th at the bottom mark, has had a great upwind. So going from 9th to 7th, it's not it's not really putting them into the playing field that they want to be in, considering they're reigning world champions. But any point less is a point less, so they'll take that, I'm sure. Then Phoenix, and then Sled bringing up the rear. Now, watching Honda set the Spinnaker around the offset mark, they have a huge knot.
Oh,
that
dear.
I don't think it's about. That almost looks like it is rigged incorrectly. So they are bringing the kite back in. In fact, I think they saw as well that it didn't look like it was just a wine glass. It looked like it was not going to get pulled out as well. So that might be a huge loss to the Brazilian team, unfortunately. Also, an hourglass and what looks like just an early
Same with
wrong
Honda.
on Preventa. So Preventa really struggling. The kite is inside and to windward of the jib. So this is just a bad early jibe. They're going to get rolled here by Allegre. I'm surprised they haven't decided to jibe back already, but instead they're just going for a really deep downwind, trying to pull the kite around. They're coming, working hard to get the kite around the front of the bow. Unfortunately, that's a struggle for the Turkish boat, who was doing so well, who caught all the way up to third.
Same too, Jenny, with Honda. Yeah, we've got the same. We're just looking at Honda. Honda having the same problem, and they've decided to get the kite back below, and they're still sailing down to the right side. They've got no kite. It's taking them some minutes to get themselves sorted out.
Well, you'd think they just kind of swirl down below to get another kite up on deck. If it looks like they're actually re-rigging their kite right now, then that might just take a while. It was a big mess up, but I think at the moment I see the head of the Spinnaker popping out, so they are going to go with the same kite, and they have gotten it untangled and unfurled. So a big mistake there. I don't know who's going to be the one to blame for that. So that'll be a crew maneuver debrief for sure. And they are finally up and flying, but an unfortunate error.
Remember, it's not a blame culture, Jen.
Again?
I said it's not a blame culture. It's a team sport. But you do have to debrief these processes, don't you? You know, it can't happen again when it costs you so much, especially when they've worked so hard and we're up third, fourth, fifth. Anyway, they seem to have got themselves sorted out, forced well out to this right side looking downwind. Meantime, no such problems for the Luna Rossa and Azura. If anything, perhaps Quantum have made that bit of a gain, getting past Provezza. Provezza had that kite problem too. And the whole picture has changed for Quantum Racing. As you said, going round the top mark in fourth, now up to third.
Yeah, and those kite sets, you know, there's a lot again, like there's a lot going on in these boats, and you know, any one problem can easily cause issues. I mean, we saw on Provezza yesterday a bit of a wipeout, and when we talked to them on shore today, Tony Ray was telling me how it happened, and it was, you know, a combination of 10 or 15 different things. You know, water on board causing more of a heel, and you know, a little bit of an override with the jib sheet and the backstay. And so just a combination of a lot of things can turn into a disaster, and it's always difficult to find the root of the problem.
That's right.
And oftentimes it's just a little bit of an oversight, or maybe
and that's
rush in a maneuver on the dowse or something.
That's the two things that you debrief. It's why did it happen, and making sure it doesn't happen again, and then making sure that when the problems do start to escalate, that you do the right thing to minimize the effects of a small problem. So anyway, Honda hanging out to that right side, looking for some something of a miracle to get them back into the race. But Luna Rossa and Azura with a pretty solid lead now, as you say, Jen. On board there with the Luna Rossa, helmsman Francesco Bruni. 3 Olympics for Italy.
But
if I'm not wrong, I think his 3rd time with Luna Rossa, and one of the first picks when the Luna Rossa team was selected.
Yeah, well, on this downwind, you know, this port jibe is going to be a much longer jibe because they're able to surf these big swells and take them down, you know, more VMG towards the mark after they surf, and you can see their tracks on the virtual eye. You know, when that comes back on again, you can see how they've been going down 10 degrees and up 10 degrees and down 10 degrees, and you know, really able to play these waves. All these boats going to be quite a lot of boat speed and a lot of time on port jibe here with the right shift that they have at the top of the course. And, you know, with the swell able to go much faster on this jibe.
So once again, sorry.
Earlier, I was just keeping an eye on them, and it looked like Peter Holmberg sails the boat with a lot more heel than maybe the other boats around them. And I couldn't at the time figure out if it was better or not, but they just finally rolled over the top of Allegre. So it at least looked like it was a better move, and they were able to take one big long surf high and then low over the top, and they forced Allegre out. But that's interesting. It worked today. It didn't work yesterday because they wiped out a descendant.
Yeah, well, you know, in asymmetrical boats downwind, I mean, you're going to use a lot of in symmetrical, you know, kite boats as well. You're going to use your heel to steer a lot, and so if they're trying to put a high mode in, you might see a little bit of leeward heel to help that happen, and then a squash later. And definitely more dynamic on the weight if you're trying to roll a boat. Whereas other teams that maybe are trying to push the low mode and get the jibe out in front before they get rolled, you know, are going to be a lot flatter boats and trying to keep the bow down. So we're seeing these boats jibe across now. We saw last time that, you know, there were boats that gained from both sides. You know, definitely some pressure differentials here that are to be played. But we also saw the boats that jibed late make their gains late in the run as they were able to keep surfing those waves, those big swells on port, while the other boats were coming down starboard going a little bit slower. Good overview here. You know, Luna Rosa and Azura probably just driving early, protect the fleet, make sure that nobody gets too much leverage on either side. Both those boats pretty solidly in first and second, huh, Andy?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Certainly for Luna Rosa, after yesterday, a nice win on the board. So a question from Dean on Twitter. As ever, if you've got any questions, post them on our social media channels. And Nick, you were just saying, in fact, that you spoke with Tony Ray and Provezza. What did happen?
Well, so they had a bit of a mishap on one of the downwinds, and, you know, there's a lot that goes on, and we talked yesterday about Onda putting pressure on them. They were racing out to the right side looking downwind with Onda close on their, you know, stern, and both jibing at the same time, going very far, close to ley line, both jibing and Onda starting to roll, and Provezza put under a lot of pressure to execute the jibe perfectly. And in the breeze yesterday with the huge waves, there's a ton of water that comes over the bow of the boat, and it washes towards the stern, but then flows back into the center of the boat and goes down below. And when you have that happening, there's momentum with all of your heel because the water will rush to that side. So if you have to jibe a little bit hot and there's a bunch of water down below, then it shifts to the leeward side and makes the boat heel even more, and puts pressure on the boats to execute perfectly. And then you've got, you know, all the other sail controls and things that need to change, and if anything goes wrong, then, you know, you might have to put the bow down, be conservative, and douse the kite like they did yesterday, losing, you know, several boats all at once.
So, Jenny, the advantage in terms of the leaderboard then swings to Azura clearly in this race, but Quantum keeping the pressure absolutely on.
Yeah, I mean, Quantum has moved forward from fourth into third position. I think that was mostly because of Provezza having a bad Spinnaker set, but it means that it's just going to be 1 point separating those two leaders, and it feels like sort of the battle of the giants again. I mean, all last year, the 2017 season, it was between those two boats repeatedly, and I think we're seeing Azura shine now. We're seeing why they were series leaders last year. We're seeing their super crisp, clean boat handling, boat work. I mean, they didn't step a foot wrong yesterday, and probably the only thing we could say that Quantum did wrong today was just choosing to go a little too far left, a little too long early in the first upwind. But I don't think we'll see them make that same mistake again. We know how hard Terry is about his own tactical mistakes.
Yeah, well, you know, and he clearly learned that lesson setting up early on the starboard ley line, second time around, and made a gain, forced on to deduct them, and that's one boat gain. You know, and really close to Preveza, putting pressure on them, and when the pressure's on, it's easy to make mistakes. They got the kite wrapped up, and then there's 2 boats right there, so Quantum doing a good job getting themselves back into that good position, strong position to stay up, you know, putting the pressure on Azura on the overall leaderboard. So we're looking at Luna Rossa, Jen. They're coming into the finish here. These guys are pretty sizable lead, although not as sizable as Azura's yesterday.
But in fact, this will be Luna Rossa's second win of the season. I think they only won the first race in Zadar. This will be their second win in the 52 Super Series, first win of the World Championship, the Rolex TP52 World Championship. So I think a little bit of satisfaction on board the emblematic America's Cup team representing Italy, challengers of record, and in the end, quite close between Quantum and Azura.
Yeah, you see them both do that big dive down right at the end, trying to gain a little bit of extra distance. I mean, the boats don't slow down right away, so if you can point them more towards the finish line, you might be able to gain a bit, but it looks like Azura probably took that over Quantum, just slightly further ahead, able to come out with a little bit more speed.
So Azura getting second, Jenny?
Yeah, I think that'll be Azura taking that second place, but that is a very impressive comeback for Quantum to have been as deep as they were at points in that race and to really make them fight for that second spot. That's just a testament to the team.
And in the end, Preveza not too bad in fourth. Obviously, they had a mechanical problem with their spinnaker, but they did go round that top mark. First time up in 8th place, and they'll come away with a fourth. So a little bit bittersweet for them coming through this line, but I think their best result so far, 5th and 9th yesterday, 4th today. A big Guy Reid on the pumps there in the white t-shirt, the grinder on board Preveza. And then next through, Jenny, Allegri.
Allegri, the British team here, they were sitting tied for third after their 2 course PTs, so they'll be a bit disappointed, I'm sure, with their 5th place, but you know, they've got really good teams behind them as well, so it's not a disappointing race when you can see reigning world champs Platoon just finishing behind you. And Platoon, good for them. They've caught another boat. They've gotten one more step forward into that 6th position. I think that was mostly because Honda dropped so far back, unfortunately. So it's Platoon followed by Sled, the US-Japanese team, followed by Phoenix just coming in at the 10 end of the line, and then Honda with such a tough spinnaker wrap or rigged incorrectly to drop all the way from what was, I think, 3rd to 9th place here. So disheartening race for the Brazilian team. I'm sure there's going to be disappointment on board. They were doing so well there, but a really, really good, impressive, interesting race. I mean, if we could think through to the first upwind, I said that the top 3 boats were from every different side of the race course. From the right was Luna Rossa, from the middle was Azura, and from the left was Quantum Racing. And I think
Jenny,
you can ask for any race course.
Just we did lose Sled on the trackers in the middle of the race. Just give us an update how they did. How did they finish in the end?
They finished just behind Platoon there. So Sled was pulling in
7th.
a 7th place position. Yeah.
Okay, well, hopefully we can certainly see them. They look to be in reasonable spirits. They were one of the most consistent teams on the circuit so far this season. We're lying in 3rd place in the Super Series, and 3rd in Zadar and 3rd in Sibinic. Not quite as consistent then so far this regatta, this World Championship.
Well, and like we said, Andy, totally
on board with the Luna
conditions.
Rossa then, just looking at Shannon Falcone. Just debriefing with the afterguard. That's Francesco Bruni.
Yeah, you got the hand karate going, you know, with the boats. And
so that's the result of race number 3 of this Rolex TP52 World Championship. Winners are Luna Rossa, coming back after that disappointing start to their World Championship. 2nd, Azura. 3rd, Quantum Racing. 4th, Preveza. 5th, Allegri. 6th, Platoon. 7th, Phoenix. 8th, Honda, suffering with that kite problem on the last run. We're right up there in the mix. And well, we have Sled in ninth, but we know that according to Jenny, then Sled did come through the line in seventh. So I think we're going to go pretty much into this short coastal race as quickly as possible. It'll take a little bit of time to set up. But Nick, just give us a quick run through what the course is for this coastal race.
Yeah, so the course is going to be basically another windward leeward, but it's a 3-mile windward beat and then a very long leeward run. So you're basically going around and then go.
So it's pretty much the same beat and then running right back down into the river past Cascais.
Correct. So it's going way downwind, and the only trick is that you've got a gate in the middle,
which is just to keep the
fleet
nice and compact.
You have to go in between the gate. So there'll be some separation for the boats, but not a ton.
So that's our coastal race. It'll be coming up very soon, but do stay with us. Come back and join us in a few minutes for the second race of today, and a good race there for Luna Rossa. Who's going to win the coastal race? Join us again in a few minutes. Well, good afternoon. Welcome back to Cascais in Portugal. We're going into the second race of the day. We've just seen a win for Luna Rossa in the first windward leeward. The second race is a longer race. It's a 3-mile upwind followed by a 6-mile downwind down towards Lisbon and the Tagus River. And that's a fairly complex situation the further you get downwind. We spoke with Gustavo Lima, the Olympic expert here in Cascais, before the boats docked out, and he was explaining how this might go.
I would say that it's going to be tricky, because if the wind doesn't fill in, like, for example, like yesterday, I think people have to be aware of the current of the river, because I think the bottom mark will be far away. So, yeah, a lot of things will happen today.
What does the current do in general?
Well, it affects a lot the direction of the wind in the bottom part. So if you still have pressure to come inside on the left side of the downwind, it will you can gain on that if you have the current coming towards to the course. But we will have to adjust that just before the start, because it's still have 4 or 5 hours for that.
Situation according to Gustavo Lima, our Olympic expert, 25 years. He's sailed out of Cascais, lots of training for the Olympics, and it's getting more complex as they get down the course. Jenny Tulloch, I think, is on the start line. We're waiting. We're inside the start sequence for this not coastal race, this extended windward leeward race. Jenny, how's it looking?
It's turning into a beautiful afternoon here. I think we've probably seen about 3 or 4 more knots of breeze build just in that last little 20-minute range. So we've got. He was rearing up to go slightly longer top mark, but not too much longer, and then a very long downwind, I'm sure as you guys have said. So not much time to the start now, and the boats are fighting hard for this right-hand side for the committee boat. And furthest right boat looks like it might be Luna Rossa. They're the only boat still on port tack. They're coming in trying to find a haul. In fact, they've not gone all the way to the right. They're looking to steal the hole just underneath Phoenix, and then underneath USA 5095. So Luna Rossa able to sneak in there, I think just under sled, kind of gave them some opportunity. Platoon double tacking up, Corvetta sort of going straight head to wind, and 45 seconds to go with a lot on.
There is a lot on, yeah. Looks to be a little bit more breeze, if anything, Jenny.
There's definitely about 3 or 4 more knots now, so we might be into 17 knots at the moment. Probably it'll be like 18 knots at the top mark, and I think teams have changed their jibs accordingly. Only 20 seconds to go here, Andy, and I think boats might be shoved out of the boat. Platoon is the boat right now with the biggest control on the boat. They are leaving a gap for Luna Rossa to come in. With just 7 seconds to go, Luna Rossa is able to accelerate, but behind them, sled not having any opportunities, and outside of sled, Phoenix held out to dry. So a great start there for what looks like Luna Rossa, Platoon, Provetta, also Azura and Quantum, the 5 boats closest to the boat on the line, and then sled just rounded going for the early tack.
Interesting start.
A little bit of distance for Phoenix here to come in and not have to tack.
Interesting start then from Allegra down at this pin end of the line. And tacking across onto port early, looking to cross the fleet. Not looking too bad at the moment. It was going to be very, very close. But of course, they are the team which have the local knowledge with Gustavo Lima, who we just saw coming into this second race of the day. Looking quite a nice little left-hander there, if anything, Nick. Not looking too bad at all.
Yeah, well, you know, you see Allegra going all the way down to that pin end. It's definitely going to be a pin end favored line there. And you can see and they cross these starboard boats. And they're just trying to take all the line bias they can get so that they can take it to that right side and then end up playing that game from the pin end.
You know, it's such a ballsy move, but it has worked out. They've crossed Quantum Racing. They were about to cross Azura and Provetta, both of whom just tacked underneath. So really, really well done for Allegra, for Andy Horton to say, you know what, we've got this, starting at the pin on port, and for Andy Soriano to go, all right, I'm with you, and to take it. But I think that's a winning move if I've seen one this week.
Oh, there we go. But all credit to them. They recognise that. The only team to do that. And a little bit of disappointment in the previous race, but that's looking good for them just now.
Yeah, well, you know, smart. There's, like we said in the previous races, is that there's everybody wants to get to that right side where that you can gain from the geographical shift out there and from all the elements that are going to make it better. But there's a lot of different ways to get there, and whether it's starting at the boat end and tacking right away, or staying on starboard with the fleet for a little bit and taking the best lane back, or, you know, if there's enough of a pin favor, then crossing the fleet from the left, and they're going to be really happy with that start.
There, look, from this aerial shot, there looks to be good pressure just on their bow, just to the just on the bow, say, and just to the right of them as they get closer to the shore. But Onda looked very good just now as well. Well to windward of Quantum and good pressure.
Yeah, we saw this last time. You know, the boats that are left on the beginning of the leg, you know, you get a little bit of left shifts down there and a little bit more pressure, but as they come up to the right side, you know, you're going to get that right shift, flatter water.
Yeah.
And we've seen that happen time and again here. You know, these right-hand boats are going to gain. It's just a question of how long it takes until they gain.
So we're on Platoon just now, Jenny. They really do have some work to do.
Yeah, maybe we lost Jenny, but yeah, Platoon, you know, back here in this similar spot as the previous race today. But, you know, it's going to be, with this longer course, it's going to be interesting to see that you can go further right. There's more leverage to be had. But, you know, like we were talking about before with that, what Jenny was talking about, that zipper on the upwind, sort of a line of pressure, you know, you can go further right, but you might not want to, as these strategists are trying to decide how far right can we go to get that advantage out there. But if you get too close to shore and under the Sintra Mountain, then you've got a very unstable breeze and a lot of light air.
But certainly that initial lead is to Allegra. Quite liking Onda's position out to this left side.
Yeah, well, the thing about Onda, you know, Onda, Quantum, Platoon out here, they don't have much of an option. They can go fast and they can look good now, and hopefully they can turn that into a good position, maybe hopefully a good lee bow on the long tack starboard when they come to it. But for now, all they can really do is go fast, whereas you know, the boats down in Phoenix, Luna Rosa, Provezza, Allegra, you know, in a great spot, are all just able to put the bow down and dig into that shift, and they're going to have a lot more options as the course goes along.
So it is a 3-mile windward leg and a 6-mile downwind with a midway gate. Maybe have a quick look at the course when we get a chance. Looking just now at Provezza going across on port. Provezza in 6th on the leaderboard. So looking at the course then is a 3-mile upwind, pretty much the same axis as the windward leeward, or the previous windward leeward. We're going upwind for 3 miles round that top mark. As you see, you can just to get a little bit more of the topography there, that mountain out to the right, that's what influences. And then coming back down through the gate, and then downwind heading towards Lisbon and the river coming out, and then back upwind to the finish.
Yeah, and it'll be really interesting to see how this goes as they get, you know, the first beat's going to look very similar to the races we've had, but as they get down there closer to the bottom, current's going to become a factor. There's going to be a lot more leverage to be had, very different, you know, pressure all going on. So,
but certainly, what we have seen, and again, this is a longer race, shall we say, but the coastal races we've had this season, when you get your nose in front on the first leg, then it's been a chance of being able to extend, and I wonder whether Allegra are going to be able to do that.
Yeah, well,
today it's a fairly steady, solid breeze.
Yeah, a bit more pressure now, and you know, for sure on these longer races, it becomes less of a tactical question and more of a strategical question. And so the gains and losses are going to be made on leverage against the fleet and picking the correct shift and the correct pressure areas and lanes, as opposed to necessarily the boat-on-boat action that we've been seeing in the last few races.
It's a nice shot of Azura then. Azura in 5th just now, early on. There's just 1 point between them and the overall standings on this World Championship leaderboard going into this race.
Yeah, well, the Honda here looking actually quite well. They've definitely, still pressure is up, yes, but definitely still some puffs out there and opportunities to gain little bits here and there by just picking slightly better lanes with a little bit more pressure. Honda definitely looking good against Quantum and Allegre, in the pressure. They're going quick up on this side for now, and we'll see if they if the late right gains as it has in the past, and how much.
So this race in the balance already on the first upwind, second race of the day. All to play for Allegre with that early lead coming off the left end of the line. Port tacking the fleet. Quantum Racing coming back at them though. Jenny, what's your thoughts? We're looking at Quantum Racing just now, pretty solid in second.
Quantum Racing did a good job, getting out to the favored pin end of the line and then tacking early. Not nearly as good a job as Allegre, obviously, who was able to port tack the whole bow. I don't know if you guys can see what we're seeing, but just off of Provenza, there's this tiny little pod of baby dolphins, and they are cruising through the fleet, giving their love to Provenza right now. I think giving them a little extra tailwind boost.
I think there's one team that need it.
It's not. Yeah, exactly. But no, I don't see any dolphins over at Quantum. I do see what looks like what you guys are saying is decent pressure continuing out to the left, and I think they probably can hang in it longer than the fleet on the right-hand side. It looks almost like Sled has already dropped out of the pressure on the right, and Lunarossa is about to as well. But for sure, it's about where to play this course up the middle and up the left, and maybe even to avoid some dolphins, which our motorboats having to do right now.
So Jenny, this is a longer beat. Does that take the windward mark closer to the land, or is the start further downwind? How does the geography and the topography affect this first upwind?
There's two things about it. It's not only longer, but it's also further to the right, just another 5-10 degrees. So it's putting us right into this headland in a lot of ways, and I think that is really affecting the way that this fleet is having to sail. We're much closer to shore, so it is affecting the loss of breeze as well inshore, but it's also going to mean it's going to drag the breeze even further right as we get in here. So nobody has packed back yet ultimately, and I think that's probably testament to just really believing in what is going to be a big right shift at the end, that it's going to gain over maybe what's the pressure out here. But I don't know. I mean, Quantum is still putting their foot down on port tack, but one boat has actually tacked back out left, and that's Azura, is tacking out for more out on that left side, crossing behind Honda. So I didn't see if it was just because they were in bad air. I think maybe it was because they were in Allegre's air, and we were sort of forced out to that left. But if you believed in the right wholeheartedly, then you would just send it to the right no matter what. So I think they are thinking there's still some opportunities on the left, and as the current leaders, you got to assume maybe they're getting it right.
Yeah, well, it's all a numbers game for some of these guys, and you take the number of boat lengths you can gain from the starting line and the number of boat lengths you can gain from being in better pressure, and then the number you would lose from being in bad air and from doing 2 extra tacks, and you sort of try to come up with what would be the better option in terms of just minimizing loss if you're in a bad situation, So Azura, probably, attacking back here now. Definitely going to light that right side, and just, it's just as these boats, you can see that Quantum, Honda, Azura, they're staying a little bit higher and able to just go a little bit faster. You can see that there's more pressure out on that left side, just by a knot or two, if anything. But the question is going to be, when are they going to fall into that lighter spot on the right and get way headed, and are they still going to be ahead by then?
Well, we've seen the first boat come back from the right and Sled. They were sort of the first boat to tack out because they were forced at the boat. And much the same as their last start. Their last start, they were the furthest boat to the right, and then they tacked off early, and then they decided to wait to come back from that right side. And I think, unfortunately for Sled, maybe their boat speed isn't as great as they want to be. It's not really paying off like they'd want. I think they really want that right side to work hard, and instead they're rounding the top mark more like 4th or 5th. So possibly it's just that the early right is too early, and instead boats like Lunarossa, who held a bit longer and then went to the right, are doing better. Lunarossa has just been slammed by Allegre. So we'll see if they determine to go back out again. It looks like, yes, they're going to go for one more.
Yeah, well, definitely the team's hoping that their choices are going to be the right ones, but you know, maybe Sled getting out to the right and making good gains, maybe overlaying the mark early a couple of times and being in trouble there. So lots of things are going on, lots of complications, but it's good to talk about them since we don't see them on our tracker, Jenny, just so you know, that we've lost our tracking data. So if you can keep us updated on that, that would be great. But Sled coming in from that right side, probably fourth or fifth here.
No, so Sled's essentially just crossed behind Quantum Racing and is the boat that's just forced Honda to tack. So Honda's just leave out Sled, and if you could take the mental image of wherever Honda is on the race course right now, Sled's about 1 boat length to win rid of them and about 5 boat lengths to lure it of Quantum. So yeah, it might put them somewhere like that. Just overall, maybe with Allegre, Luna Rossa, Quantum being the top 3, maybe they're even sitting in 4th.
Yeah, so Sled there in the middle of the course as we see on our virtual, somewhere in between Quantum and Honda, probably across Honda now on starboard, so just sort of in the pack. Here we can see them now, so you know, Honda on starboard now, and Sled above them and Quantum above them. So now we begin the march on to the mark, and the sort of the ley line battle is gonna start here. And so we saw in the last race a lot of right-hand shifts at the end, Andy, that caused some people to overlay.
I think that'll be more pronounced because we're that bit closer to the land, and also, well, we know that the breeze will be more up and down, more varied. We've seen this many times here before, particularly on these longer races.
Yeah, well,
there's a little bit of brinksmanship, how far you go to the right to get that the bigger shift, but with that comes the more varied breeze, more up and down.
For sure. I mean, it's a risk to do both. It's a risk to stay low because, as we saw for boats like Quantum and Platoon yesterday, staying low and coming in late on port can be 2nd place, and it can be 6th or 7th place depending on half a boat length and whether you can fit in or not. And so, but it's also risky to get too far to the right. The risk is to overlay. The risk is to get out in their light air out there. And so it's just difficult decisions for these tacticians and strategists to make, for sure.
So certainly Allegre don't seem to have done too much wrong after that start.
Yeah, well, like we say, when you get ahead, you want to play back on the fleet, around you. So they saw them hit Luna Rossa and make Luna Rossa do 2 extra tacks, gaining probably 20 meters there for Allegre. But I'd be surprised if they're not on ley line to not see them come over soon again, as boats like Preveza, Phoenix, gaining quite a bit on the right there compared to boats like Platoon. Just getting, as you get further right, it just looks like at the end of this leg you're doing better. Just looking at Allegre here, it's Jenny, talk to us about what the waves look like out there. I mean, these guys are bouncing up and down quite a bit. Looks like, big sea state even when you get close to shore.
It's more just longer swell. There's not really a lot of short chop. It's just small chop on top of this big ocean swell. So it's the sort of stuff that they were riding downwind. And surprisingly, once we come up the course here, we're in the protected area from this coastline, so it feels a lot lighter than it felt at the start. I mean, maybe it's 14, 15 knots for a moment, but the clouds that we were talking about earlier are almost all dispersed. So it is free to row out here and free to get sunny and hot on land to keep getting the sea breeze build, but we haven't really seen it build the way that it did the other day, and the waves aren't building in effect either.
Yeah, well, the flatter water certainly makes the boats go faster and higher. I mean, it's a lot less disturbance on the keels and keeping the lift going under the water. But as in the longer races like this, where you start in 15 or 18 knots and it comes down to 13, 14, Andy. I mean, these guys, it must be difficult decisions to pick what sails to use and decide what's more important, pressure or shift.
Yeah. Particularly as the breeze drops as they go up the course, you need to be max power at the top of the course coming into this top mark.
Well, and so if you're deciding whether you get a fuller jib or a flatter jib, you know, flatter going to be better down at the start and more breeze, then the question is, do you want your gain to be right off the line, or do you want it to be here on the lay line? You know, which one matters more?
I think without doubt coming off the line, 'cause that's when you gain your initial position, you can always power things up a little bit more. So Jenny, how's it looking? We're just looking particularly at Quantum versus Luna Rossa, and Onda in the mix. Onda in fourth, furthest out to the left of that group. What are the options?
Well, just between them as well is Allegre. I mean, essentially they're split in the middle,
Yeah.
horizontally between Quantum and Luna Rossa, but vertically they're about two and a half buildings short of Luna Rossa. So if Luna Rossa's on ley line and Allegre is not, which is how it's looking to be shaping up, then Allegre needs to do 2 more attacks, and that might put them squarely in line with Luna Rossa. So it might be that this final right determinant, here it is, in fact. Here's Allegre going for the attack, and we are accelerating for it to be calling this leave out when it happens. And I think it looks like Allegre will be able to at least have a clean leave out, although Luna Rossa sort of just put their bow down a little bit. So you can see Miguel concentrating really hard as what's going on. I think maybe Allegre is even across, which is going to be an interesting decision to make. They are crossing. Now I have Luna Rossa as on ley line, so any distance that Allegre sails past this is extra distance, but maybe we're just getting into a tiny bit of a left tip here, and Luna Rossa is not on ley line anymore.
I think Luna Rossa are just low of ley line, just looking at their angle they sit, we could see from on board, and correspondingly Allegre just tack.
Allegre basically went up and hit on Sled's line, so they've kind of assumed that the whole back of the pack has made the right call instead of Luna Rossa's early call, and I think we'll just see if Luna Rossa can do later on if they're not laying, how they can get back into the mix. It'll be difficult for them to cross to lead off Sled, but I think that's the slot they're looking for.
So Sled here, give us another update, Jenny, on what's, you know, where Sled's looking in the fleet. They're basically between Allegra and Provezza right now.
Yeah, they're 3 buildings back, 2 buildings back from Allegra's line, almost in line, and yeah, the same distance again to Provezza.
So we're watching Quantum Racing have just tacked and going back at Zura, should cross them.
And the same with Onda, and Onda's going for a big duck on Azura.
Yeah.
Clean duck it looks like, and Quantum is crossing Azura. So Azura's keeping it quite late to go for this tack cross and get back in. There's the white offset mark that they have to avoid, so Azura's going to have to tack in here at some point in time. Luna Rossa has just finally gone through their tack. Luna Rossa was waiting for Quantum to kind of be their blocker later on, I guess. So they've Vasco's waving at Quantum all the time. Quantum going for the tack, lead-outing Sled. Luna Rossa just tacking in front of their stern, and they are very, very close to the bow threat of Quantum. Quantum getting rolled here, though. Terry Hutchinson with the red flag up 2 off our roads here. We are green flagging it up on our road. Sled rolling over the top of Quantum. A disappointed Terry Hutchinson ball in front of all of us. Allegre rounds the top mark in the lead. A good, solid lead. A huge testament to a great
strategy
for those guys.
Yeah.
And that was a fabulous strategy to cross everyone on board. So 3 buildings behind Allegre, Prada, Luna Rossa, rounding in second. This will be a great day for them if they're able to pull off these 2 races the way that they are at the current moment. And then behind them, Sled has been able to round, rolling over the top of Quantum Racing.
So
and
they Sled get round in third, yeah?
Pacing back and forth, yeah. Quantum inside of them in 4th position, and behind them, Azura caught back up into 5th. Onda into 6th. Provezza dropping slightly down to 7th. And then it's Phoenix in 8th. And again, Platoon after a very tough start in 9th. And Allegre with a very early dive, diving right around the offset mark. But still in the lead as behind them, Luna Rossa jives as well, and Sled and Quantum jive on the inside. So Luna Rossa might be in a bit of a tough spot here with the wall of blanket that is Quantum Racing and Sled on their inside.
Yeah, well, we almost saw a little bit of the, the boats that were able to tack just under ley line, even do 2 tacks at the end, seemed to gain at the end of that beat. So some boats certainly got too far right, and some boats maybe just not quite getting enough into the right shift, boats like Platoon and Onda. And so as you go on this downwind, definitely a big right shift. A lot of boats jibing right away. The difference in angle on the downwind is smaller. So the leverage will be smaller, but this downwind is much, much longer. So it'll be interesting to see. These teams probably going to be trying to play that right side, but staying inside the pressure, where the pressure's still on and not getting too close to shore.
That's right, here we go on board with Platoon. Grinder there in the middle, Gerd Harbermuller, Olympic bobsleigh representative in the previous life. And then on with Quantum.
So a bit of a split here. You see Azura, Onda, Phoenix staying on starboard, the rest of the fleet jibing. Definitely, going to be a better shift to jibe right away, better on playing the shifts.
Yeah.
But you've got to imagine there's better pressure as you get away from shore here.
Interesting though to watch Allegra's choice, because I say that upwind, they definitely got it right, and I put a little bit of faith in what Gustavo Lima has been saying to them.
Yeah, well,
I know that Gustavo was telling me before the regatta that you always watch the wind direction and speed up, not just in the bay, but also what it's doing. Look at the buoy out at on the next big bay up at Guinshaw. So he's always monitoring that to see what the trend is further up the coast.
So Phoenix now jibing and onto the only boat still on starboard. Definitely a much longer downwind here, so the boats are going to be looking, like we said before, more on the strategic side of things and more where the pressure is the most and where the shift is going to help them the most, as opposed to necessarily battling with the boats. But we're still going to get some of those fights. And boats like Azura, Phoenix, probably hoping that there's going to be fights between Quantum, Provezza up there on the top, Luna Rossa, Allegre, that slows them down just a little bit so they can catch up.
Jenny, how's it looking then down this run? It looks a little bit more pedestrian down that left side, looking downwind perhaps, a little bit lighter.
Well, we are on the left side, so I can't tell how windy it is over on the right. It's definitely windier than the earlier, lighter than the earlier race today a little bit. It's harder for the boats to really surf the swells. They sort of surf it for a touch and then it goes right under them. So a touch being maybe the 2 seconds, whereas earlier today we were getting more like 7 seconds.
Yeah.
Luna Rossa had to come up and defend high against Sled behind them and Quantum Racing after that. And you could see Vasco Vescoto staring at the eagle eye of their telltale at the top of their mast. It was like he was angry at it, but he was just making sure that they were getting themselves in a position where they could ride the waves down but still have clear air behind them from those two attacking boats. But just keeping in mind, they will all have to jibe to that middle gate on the downwind, so it isn't just a straight shot all the way to the bottom marks, and that's going to be the one thing that everyone's thinking about.
So we're just looking at Eduardo de Sousa Ramos, the owner-driver on the Onda there. Fully dressed for the big conditions with Robert Scheidt just on his shoulder, just talking to him about the wind pressure as we go down here. Look pretty relaxed. I think they do have a little bit more pressure out on this side. And on the virtual, Jenny, we're certainly seeing a gain to Azura relative to Quantum and Luna Rossa. What are you thinking, Nick, with... yeah, sorry. Go on, Jenny.
Right now it looks like, and I know you guys can't see it, so apologies, but the ghost ship, the white boat, Sled, who's not there on the tracker, has kind of rolled over the top of Luna Rossa, has given Quantum some batter as well, and is almost attacking Allegre a bit. So I'm not sure how much of that Azura gaining on the far side is a shift or a better breeze, or whether it's just these two boats themselves have suffered by Sled particularly. And Sled, meanwhile, is really putting the pressure on Alegre in front of them. But it's an interesting scenario. I don't know what Sled's doing differently here. I can't see by eye what they're doing differently. I mean, they're sailing hotter and the boat's more heels, and yet Prada didn't really defend against them any longer, so they bore away and they went breeze behind, and now they're just defending against Quantum instead, and Sled's in their own little battle pulling Alegre up and out to the left.
Well, we saw Luna Rossa in the last race, having some difficulty with Azura behind them. So maybe they're still trying to figure things out downwind. I would go to guess that they've got different kites up, and like we said, in these longer races where it's going to be lighter as you get inshore, but windy or offshore, it's a really interesting question whether you choose to go with a more powered up sail or whether you go with a flatter sail, so it's a really interesting decision, and one that's going to, you're going to have strengths in the light air if you choose a more powered up sail, and you're going to be a little bit weaker if the boats start to plane and surf more and get the apparent build. So, it's there's a lot of complications on these boats that can determine whether you're going faster or slower than the boats next to you, and there's lots that goes into it.
Yeah, still quite liking Azura's position slightly further to the right, as Jenny just saying, than Allegra and Luna Rossa in particular battling each other, or just keeping each other high, shall we say.
Yeah, well, like we said, it's...
Whereas the opportunity is with Azura down this inside, I think almost certainly having a little bit more pressure.
Yeah, well, and for sure they're going to be happy to be further away from the fleet and able to focus on only going fast. The tacticians on board are sort of like facilitators of the whole boat. They're talking to the driver, but they're also getting all the information from the kite trimmers and the strategists, navigators, all this, and then communicating that to everybody. So if they are able to make sure that everybody is just going as fast as possible and they don't have to be looking around at what the other boats are doing, then it could make a really good, big difference on the boat speed.
Certainly, it's in the balance between Azura and Quantum Racing. It's tipping back and forth.
Yeah, well, we're seeing all the boats jibe now, and Alegre extending their lead by 100 meters basically since the rounding. They're going quite well, and we see a sled down there coming across, and Azura maybe not looking quite as good as we thought. Those guys on starboard jibe right now actually have very good angle, look like great pressure coming in. So maybe they're on ley line to the gate mark that they have to go through, or maybe it was just a very good shift and a nice puff that they all chose to take down the course.
Yeah, Jenny, how do you see it?
I think that's accurate. There's definitely more breeze now than about 4 minutes ago when we were last talking about the breeze on this left. So everyone at the moment sort of planing across this jibe, the starboard jibe, is not the jibe to be surfing the waves. It's more just across sideways to the waves. So boats are all accelerating and staying at a certain speed, and it's a bit easier for them here. And maybe that's what allowed Azura to be looking so good earlier. They're on the proper shape of the stack or the swell. Azura is going to roll into their jibe now, and they're sort of face planting Kravetsa as a windward and in front boat. I think Kravetsa, if they continue to sail fast while Azura accelerates, then Kravetsa is going to get some bad air from Azura. They should push a little lower, but that'll be a good tight battle between the two of them for who's in fourth and who's in fifth.
Just looking at sled there going downwind, nicely powered up. Obviously the pressure increasing as we get down the course.
Yeah, so taking a look at the...
a great job out left to roll Luna Rossa. I mean, oh gosh, of course, right while we speak about them, they lose their kite on a wave. Lose a better boat link there.
Curse of the commentator.
Not sure what that was. Yeah, pressure of the commentary, I guess. Sorry, guys. Prior to that, they've done a great job on the left-hand side, rolling over the top of first of Quantum at the top mark when they rolled over the top of Quantum, and then rolling over in front of them, Luna Rossa. But Luna Rossa did a really nice job staying and holding as long as they wanted, and then diving out early. So I can't actually tell between the two of those boats who's actually in second.
But certainly from Allegra's point of view, rich get richer, going down in the breeze increasing as we get down this run towards the gate. So we go through the gate and then on further downwind. So there View of sled just in front of and to leeward of Luna Rossa. So those of you looking for them on the tracker, sled still in existence and doing quite nicely. Pressure building up quite nicely as well. But things looking better all the time for Allegra, Nick.
Yeah, well, you know, like we say, if you can get away from the fleet, then you're going to be able to go faster, and they're certainly away from the fleet at this point, so that I wouldn't be surprised to see their lead just continue to grow, especially since there's not a ton of challenge in deciding where to go on the race course. It seems like most of these guys understand that, you know, one side's a little bit better and they like it, so wouldn't be surprised to see them continue to gain. But definitely more pressure up now, and it'll be interesting to see as they keep going down this downwind whether the boats decide to take the staysails down, go jibs up. You know, if they start planing, start surfing. You certainly, when we first rounded the mark, you saw a lot of people inboard and forward, and now you're seeing everybody sort of hiking way off the back. So, you know, bodies inboard and forward means that the boats are more displacement more of the time, and they're just trying to shift the body weight more to sort of steer the boat and rock on the waves. And as it gets breezier, they move the weight back, keep the bow of the water, and hope the boat gets planing on some of these waves. Just checking out Allegra here, you know, pretty far forward. You can see what we're talking about. A lot of bodies in the back hiking, you know, and there's going to be main sheet trimming way in and out as the, you know, with these big swell, as the boat turns or accelerates down the swell, the apparent wind will shift way forward and all the sails have to get trimmed in. There's a ton of load on the sails, so you got to have the grinders and the pedestals doing that. You know, you can see that adjustment on the kite much easier than you can on the main. But all that, you know, being in good balance with the steering and communication is great for boat speed.
So that battle really between Quantum Racing and Azura will be one of the keys to the day, really. Who's going to be on top of the table after this longer windward leeward, but fantastic shots there showing Allegra. A good day for them yesterday, 2 fourth places, lying 4th overall. A team which you'd have to say that over the course of their recent careers have blown a little bit hot and a little bit cold. And so this is really a nice confidence booster for them. Over 200 metres ahead of Luna Rossa, then Quantum Racing and Azura.
So through the gate now, so halfway down the downwind, hi Andy, and they're, you know, not actually, surprisingly, not all the boats are choosing to go inshore.
Interestingly, but look at that battle between Azura and Quantum Racing, really just nothing in it. Classic adversaries on this 52 Super Series circuit for so many years. Luna Rossa very much in the mix.
Well, it was amazing to see if you watch, you know, the meters and difference between the boats really grew right at the end there, where the pressure picked up. Boats got into it first, gained massively on the boats that weren't quite into it yet. So big speed differences in the pressure out here.
So just say you were in the Phoenix briefing this morning, Nick. What's the state of the tide? Because obviously we're in the Atlantic and tide is much more of an issue as it is in the Med, or indeed in Cascais, in Croatia where we were before. We've just gone through low water, I think, and the tide is starting to rise, isn't it?
Right, so there's lots of tide on shore, but the general water flow is going to be basically north to south, you know, away from the North Sea. And but as you get closer to shore, it gets a little bit different, and the tidal flows will go in and out. What we saw, or what I saw in the weather briefing this morning, is not a lot of current up by, you know, up the coast. But as they come down to this river, you know, there's a lot of inflow towards the river with the tide, and then as that gets higher, then it'll start to come out. So it just depends on exactly where they are in the cycle, whether there's current going in or out. But and you can see on the picture here, you know, the river is up there, top right of your screen, and outflow coming out from that river is going to be pushing the boats basically left to right across the course looking downwind. And so that might make port jibe a little bit longer here, which could sort of influence the decisions of the tacticians and strategists. And the other thing is that as you get further away from shore here and further away from that river, the tidal influence is going to be less. And so you're going to have less current as you get further away. And so you imagine that that's got to be coming into the minds of some of these guys. And that might be part of why they're deciding to stay on starboard for so long after this gate.
Indeed, just staying out in the better tide. Luna Rossa, navigator Francesco Mongelli, who we had in the studio in Zadar, had a little bit of a problem with his leg, a little bit of infection in the leg. Well, that's obviously all cleared up and they're in great form just now, lying second. Won the first race. So Jenny, we're looking at Platoon and Preveza also. They're the two that have held over to the Cascais shore. Can you see any gains to them?
We are on this side as well, so the
Right.
ghost ship for you guys is directly in front of us, and that's Sled. They were the only boats to jibe around that mark, and then they were falling behind by Preveza and Platoon, and it seems like we have great breeze out here. I mean, Sled's really lighting it up, and behind them Preveza as well. So I'm not sure how big the gain will be, but my assumption is that there will be.
I think so. I mean, yeah, by extension, we're seeing Preveza up to third just now on their virtual leaderboard. So Sled must be in that vicinity.
Yeah, Sled's probably about 7 boat lengths in front of Preveza. In fact,
Right, so they could be second.
Right now, so yeah, that might put them up into second. That would be great. I mean, as we were motoring along, I was thinking I'd love that these two teams are up to the front right now, Sled and Allegre, because Sled, as we were saying yesterday, is the only team to have podiumed the first 2 events.
That's right.
They didn't win either event, but they did get third, and so they kind of had a rough day yesterday with their kite breaking in half in a way that someone on the dock was telling me can just happen. You know, he was like, it wasn't like they had a bad jibe, and we noticed that. It wasn't like they wiped out. It wasn't like it got caught on something. It is just that every now and then
A kite blows up.
Hair from the zipper or something, and it blew up. And they went from what was a third to an 8th in that race, and that's an unfortunate error when that happens, because it's not an unforced error. It's just life. And I think for them to kind of get some redemption today and to be sailing much better. I mean, their second race that day was actually a third. So if they had had 2 thirds on the scoreline yesterday, they would have been sitting in third overall. And to see them sitting in 5th this morning, I'm sure it was a bit of a disappointment, and they didn't have a great first race here. So to be really putting it all out there with all the fire that they have, they're kind of doing exactly what Allegre did on the start line, but now they're doing it on the downwind.
Yeah, the breeze is definitely up out there, Jenny. And what's, you know, as we get away from shore, are the waves changing at all? Are these guys surfing, planing? What does it look like?
The swell and the waves have built kind of the last 20 minutes. So the jibe that we're on, the starboard jibe, is the jibe that you can catch the swell on. They are making the rides last a lot longer. It definitely looks like Sled will have moved into second here, I think, in terms of where they are compared to Quantum and Luna Rossa, but maybe that's just because we're so close to them, it seems like a better vantage point. But yeah, they're just doing well. On board this boat, I think it's Christian Comp is the downwind trimmer. They only have 1 grinder on the pedestals instead of a lot of the other boats normally had 2. It almost looks like it's the babbler Robbie Naismith, but I'm going to guess that that's not right, because I don't think he'd be the strongest guy necessarily on their boat. But they're confident and calm. They're not, Mr. Accor is not driving erratically or drastically along these waves. They're very small maneuvers. When he does surf down a wave, it's only, you know, maybe a 3 to 4 degree bear off, and then sort of a very slow 1 to 2 degree start to reaccelerate on the back. And it just looks really nice, really smooth, really calm. And you have to assume that that's just good communication with the trimmer and also good communication maybe with Ray Davies, just keeping them calm on board.
Yeah, well, the smoothness, the calmness, good communication, I mean, that's all going to be translate into speed, especially on these downwinds, especially with the big swell, you know, and so good on them. And Robbie, if it's Robbie Naismith coming down, it's probably to keep the bigger guys on the rail, for sure. I mean, it's blowing pretty hard out there, and they want, you know, all the weight back. And like we saw yesterday, it's not only faster to have the weight back, keep the bow out, but it's also potentially dangerous to have that bow stick in and get too much water in the boat.
Completely. Breeze is built up quite nicely there. Just looking at Allegri leading now by nearly 300 meters. Azura have lost out relative to Platoon, actually. Platoon have made that gain, and we know that Sled are also in that mix.
Sled is coming across now, has massively crossed Lunarosa's bow, and the lineup shortly will be between Sled and Allegra. And at the time that they're bearing away on this wave and maybe a left tip, it looks like Sled will have Allegra as well.
Sled will. Say that against Jenny, sorry.
I said at the moment as they bore away with a big wave and a bit of a left tip, it looked like Sled would have Allegra, but the moment of truth has not quite happened. We've got another 20 seconds until the crossing, and Allegra is doing the same now. They've got a good surf on a good wave right now, and they're sort of coming across. I mean, Sled is on starboard here. This is happening as we speak. I know you guys can't see it on the tracker, but Sled on starboard is just, again, bearing away on a good wave, and we are accelerating in the umpire boat, but no, Allegra has crossed them with about a boat length to spare. So Allegra has this lead, but it is not nearly the runaway lead that we thought it was earlier. Sled did just a phenomenal job on that downwind to catch up into a very close second place. So Allegra is going to have their eyes behind all the time here, and it's not over. This is still another probably 40 boat lengths to the bottom marks. We can see the gate in sight now, and I would assume it'll probably be a fight for the left mark, right side of the race course, but it'll be who determines this last jibe best, and it's going to be a really close battle.
So Jen, your thoughts on this course format then? Looks quite exciting and nice and open racing, and a chance for the boats to extend their legs downwind.
You know, I think they might like it. I mean,
completely.
It's almost like a free training session. It's not training clearly because it's a race, but this is what you want to do, is go out and have this time, this extended period of time with
downwind.
your swimmer and your driver.
Yeah,
downwind. I mean,
and then but the great thing is you don't have to do 6 miles upwind afterwards.
Well, it's 6 miles fighting that current. The current is
exactly.
definitely, you guys were talking about earlier, it's definitely ripping north to south. You can see it on every craft spot that we go by. So it's extending the upwinds and making these beautiful downwinds shorter. But yeah, this has been a pristine training run for these guys, and as we've been talking about for the week, they haven't gotten these glamorous conditions of a lot of wind throughout this season yet. So anytime they get to send downwind is good, and I think Sled just proves how well they can do both in light air in the first 2 events and also in breeze and in downwinds like this. And I think this next cross, they've both, Sled is driving now and Allegra has just jived, so this next cross will be kind of a second moment of truth. I think Allegra probably still has it, but yeah, this is fabulous, and they are coming into now much closer to the bottom marks. Not only does the left mark look good for getting the right side upwind, but I think it actually looks favored as well. It looks like it's closer upwind.
Yeah, well, we had a great shot there watching Sled jibe and putting their jib back up. So, you know, pressure's back on now and boats are going a little bit faster. We'll see if things are going to be different down here in this next part of the course, and it's going to be interesting to see where they choose to go.
Indeed, what are your thoughts on the upwind then, Jenny? What would you be doing if you were in Andy Horton's shoes at the moment?
Well, if I was in Andy Horton's shoes, I would have gone a bit further before that drive. I don't know why they just got so early here, and then they had one as well. Yeah, we could tell. He used to coach me in match racing, and I think ultimately that's what he thought, was we're just going to drive drop. So he didn't even seem to think they were going to fill.
Simple.
And yeah, and then they didn't. Yeah, but if they'd gone a touch further, they could have filled and then dropped. And maybe that's just a small
actually letting Sled get up to them, aren't they?
Exactly. Reeling them in. So, yes, they're rounding the right-hand side, which I think is the accurate side. I'll give you that much, at least, Andy Horton. But but it wasn't a beautiful drop. It wasn't a beautiful final moment of the downwind. And Sled really get into their stern, and even actually Sled got the tighter rounding of the two as well. So Sled, yeah, they've got a tighter rounding, but they're in a tough spot. It's going to be hard to hang that close to someone, even if you're in touch on their other hip. So I think at some point we'll see Sled have to do the clearing attack here. Maybe not. Maybe if the right is so very favored, you just sacrifice it and you say it's okay to lose a bit of distance.
Provetza and Luna Rossa alongside each other.
Yeah, so there's Sled in the clearing attack, and behind them, very close. Luna Rossa inside with right, driving into the inside position of
red flag from Luna Rossa. Jimmy
Almost going to hit that mark. Luna Rossa's pulling it so close.
Jimmy Spithill just had time to raise the flag, asking the question of the umpires.
And it is a red flag from the umpires, you guys. So red flag, I believe,
for
was just
Provetza.
pointed at Provetza. Yeah, we'll see them go to take their turns. Yeah, so
having made that gain, that's going to be painful, isn't it?
Well, really unfortunate. I mean, and I was calling that Luna Rossa was so close to the mark, it looked like they were going to hit it. So I'm not sure if maybe it was just because Provetza wasn't giving them enough room. I can confer with the umpires in a second here, but very much so Provetza is getting a red flag, and they've just realized that they're going to have to do a spin. So really unfortunate moment for the Turkish boat. They were doing so well to have caught us to fourth.
Meantime, Quantum and Zura,
made a huge,
sorry, go on, Jen.
up to fifth, and then just behind them, Quantum racing with their worst downwind of the regatta so far, dropping from what was third earlier down to sixth or seventh. On this side, behind them is Phoenix. On the far side is Azura. So whatever the little battle that Quantum and Azura had going, it meant both of the boats have dropped through the pack, and just rounding out the fleet, rounding the bottom right mark for the left-hand side is Onda. But a really interesting downwind. We saw the left side looking downwind massively pay.
Ooh, wow.
And I think that's why Quantum and Azura made the big losses. But, Luna Rossa made the far right pay as well. So, or at least they didn't lose as much. So there's something to be had about boat speed and whatnot. But the biggest bummer there is for Provetza, just unforced error with the foul at the bottom mark.
So what was the rule infringement?
Say again, Andy?
Yeah, what was the infringement?
Let me find out.
Yeah, of course.
What was the foul for? Okay, so the foul was for port starboard at the bottom mark.
Right.
So they were overlapped in the zone, but it was port starboard. It wasn't actually at the rounding, and Provetza didn't avoid.
So yeah, we're just going to look at the replay and virtual, just watching, as Jenny said, port starboard. With go on, Nick.
Yeah, so here inside the three-boat length circle, the inside boat has room, yes, but that doesn't turn off port starboard, and so Provetza has to stay away. You see them shooting low
Coming
here.
up, yeah.
But I'll bet on board Provetza, Tony Ray and those guys, Peter Humbert, they're expecting Luna Rossa to jibe around the mark, and Luna Rossa just give them a little bit of an extra hit to make sure that they get, gain more of a distance there around the mark, and then Provetza caught maybe a little bit off guard port starboard there. So, maybe just a
tough one for them.
A misjudgment on Luna Rossa's, what they were going to do around that mark.
You have to remember it's Vasco.
That's right. I have to remember it's Vasco. But interesting to see, and I don't know, Jenny, if you have any better idea about this. We lost Quantum for a while on the tracker to see what, how they lost a bit. Azura lost a bit as well, platoon gaining.
I think that the question was, where is Sled? And if that was the question, the answer to that is about 4 boat lengths back and 5 boat lengths to weather up a little bit. So they did a little tiny double tap.
I think
that's what this right side is. At the moment, it kind of looks like Prada's in their bad air. So they're a bit further back, and it's windy enough. They're probably 4 boat lengths back. That Prada might just decide it's worth it just to bear away a little and hang here instead of doing 2 clearing attacks. But they've kind of positioned themselves nicely so that when Prada rounded, they were instantly forcing them with the bad air.
Yeah, we'll see what Luna Rossa decides to do. I mean, they put a nice gain on Provetza on that mark, going very nicely here. And, maybe they can get some clear air and keep going to the right, but most of the fleet is left of them, so it would be a conservative move to tack up once and just do a clearing tack and get in front of everybody. But as Andy said, we have to remember it's Vasco, so they're always pushing forward, these guys, and also, like we say, you know, it's a lot of training for them, and you know, they're just always pushing really hard and trying to pass boats.
You know, we talked a lot the last two regattas as well about the influence of Ray Davies as the new tactician on board. He's obviously not new to the 52 fleet in any way, but he's new to Mr. Okura, and yet he sailed with a lot of the guys on board in the past. A lot of Kiwis that are used to him, and he slotted in well. You know, and he's got a calm influence, I think, on any boat that he sails on. And he seems to get along really well with Mr. Okura. He likes the dynamic on board, he said, and I think it's previously shown in the last two regattas. And as we were saying yesterday, they almost came away with 2/3. So to see them up here doing so well and fighting hard for this first place, this is great.
Yeah, well, Sled definitely doing very well this season, and you know, doing well in this race. And Ray, you know, Ray's he's a really nice, smiley guy. So I imagine that you know, I've never sailed with him, but I imagine on board it's quite a positive feel, and so it's always good to be in those boats where
and
it's
certainly
feeling
that
good.
team keep him in his place. He's the boss in the water, but as soon as they're off, then and if he makes any mistakes, there's no quarter given from his long-time friends and colleagues from Team New Zealand and previous Team New Zealands.
Well, that's true of everybody in the fleet, Andy. I
No,
mean, these
course.
guys. It's
But
hard to traverse it.
No, completely. But they've got a very strong bond on board, and that's Ray's been a great catalyst there, and is hugely respected on the team. And I think one of the key things for them was getting the boat. They built the boat at Core in New Zealand. They launched the boat early. They did the best part of a week of tuning and training early on before the boat went on a ship. And in fact, it was the first of the new 9 new boats first on the water. And I think that was quite a shrewd move. And of course, that was built on home waters, if you like, for the Kiwis. Don Cowie was able to help manage the build and was in the yard most days. Beautifully detailed boat, but they are chasing Allegra just now. Allegra still have that lead.
Yeah, well, and like we say, these guys, 2 boats that have separated themselves from the fleet are probably only going to gain more, and there's, you know, half this upwind left, and we're coming towards the end of the race. These guys are likely going to be untouchable unless they make another mistake.
Allegra won two races in Zadar. Were 6th in that regatta, and they were 7th in Šibenik. But at the moment they're lying 3rd overall. And this should put them a little bit further up the leaderboard, perhaps. Although there is a big gap. They were going into the race. They were 13 points. Quantum were on 6, and Azura on 5. So the top 2 boats really do have a little bit of a runaway situation just now.
But Azura and Quantum, I mean, we lost Quantum on the tracker, but Azura and Quantum a little bit further back this time. So maybe adding another boat into the mix of those top teams that are sort of consistently up there in the top 5 of this event. And it's always good to have more boats in the top and a close result that makes things more exciting. And
certainly keeping it interesting. Jenny, how's it looking now then? It's a little bit of a procession just now for Allegra, Luna Rossa, Platoon and Preveza all on the same line going up this beat.
Yeah, it is very much a port tack procession over to the
Cascais.
land, the coastline essentially. So we're not even close to where there would be the light spot yet. So everyone's thinking just stay on port, get towards that right step. And I think ultimately, since this is just an upwind to the finish, we might not ever get to that side. So it might just be a race to that right-hand side. And if that's it, then Allegra's got it in the bag. You know, even just the 2 boat lengths or the 1 boat length gap behind them that was fled, it's enough that they had to force them to tack off twice. And that 2 tacks has now made it kind of maybe a 4 boat length lead to Allegra. And I think if there isn't a lot of tactical decision-making back, then this will be the way that the parade hands out. And, you know, full credit to that team. They took a huge risk at the start line. Everybody knows that feeling in your heart when you go, all right, we're going to do it. Pit and start, protect the fleet. And, like, if it goes wrong, and it's hairy, it goes really wrong.
Hey.
And if it goes right, then that smile of relief and that sort of pitter-patter of your heart as it calms down is about the best thing in the world. And I think, yeah, big credit to them to have the Koanas in the 52 fleet to go for it anyway. On a super right-hand favored race course, it's awesome. I mean, we knew that the 10 was favored yesterday, and we knew again that it was favored this morning, and yet the right side is the favorite side of the course, and that's about the best way to win the course is to do exactly what they did. So they've really deserved to win this race if they do win it.
They will, yeah, kudos to them, but I'm sure Andy Horton will tell you it was a carefully calculated risk, and they were completely confident.
Yeah, slide a bit more calculated at the boat end. You know, but they've done the same. Both
No, of course.
They've hit the boat. Yeah, most at the boat. And today it didn't quite pan out because they were at the start late.
But yeah.
Actually, the boat end. Here they go. So Allegra going for the tack, and the second that Allegra started to tack, everyone came off the dock and Sled and went for the tack as well. So Sled still thinks there's one more option to be played, and that'll be by getting any left shift, left advantage, and that makes sense. I mean, it's the only way to kind of have some sort of leverage against the winners. Otherwise, they would have had to cross behind and allow Allegra to determine which way to go, and instead Sled is still very much in the fight. And it didn't hurt them that Luna Rosa had also tacked behind. So for Sled, this makes it easy, both cover and try to stay to the left of their leaders. But I don't know. I mean, maybe the one gamble would have been to cross behind, cross to the right, and hope for a tiny bit further right shift. But there's a much longer port tack left towards the finish line.
That's right.
Sorry, starboard tack.
Yeah, starboard tack. I mean, and so from that point of view, Nick, we're looking at Quantum. Quantum just now have two boats between them and their main rivals just now on the leaderboard, Azura. But these two boats are to leeward of them and would gain on the starboard tack lift.
Yeah, well, you know, like we said, these longer races tend to be more strategy, but
yeah.
After all, the strategy is pretty similar for everybody, and it all comes down, and you're, you know, back to the tactical game as you come into the finish. So, Quantum's decision is going to be, you know, for me, it would be a numbers game. It would be, you know, where are the three closest boats to me, and if two of them are on one side, I'd likely go to that side, especially if it's the right side where I think, you know, there might be a gain. Or, you know, maybe you're only worried about Preveza and you're going to get over there and make sure you have a strong position on them coming back on starboard. So
yeah, at the moment it's really about trying to keep as many boats between them and Azura as possible.
Well, I'm not sure they're thinking that way yet. I think that but for them it's mostly just how many boats can they keep between, you know, behind them and see if they can just reduce the number of points that they're getting at the end of the day.
I like your decision making, Nick, but I don't think it's the same as Terry's. We've seen them ignore the right side and the two boats on the right, and in fact they faced Platoon as they came across on starboard, and so perhaps the decision there is Platoon is the closest boat behind them. So if they want to protect against one of the two boats, they protect against the boat that's closer and the option of maybe getting past them. But they also then, in doing that, got closer to Azura as well and protecting against Azura. So a couple of the teams still seem to think there's something in it on this left-hand side, even if we're not as close to land as they were earlier, and Quantum's just one of them. So now they've got, underneath them Platoon and underneath that Azura, while most of the rest of the fleet, well, the other three boats that were in proximity with them are still headed to the right.
Of course, it's a big advantage with their kite upwind, according to Virtual. But
yeah, right. Well, the Virtual
it's just a little anomaly, but it's gone down.
Virtual is saying Preveza and Quantum are basically bow to bow right now. You know, 1 meter difference between them, or 3 meters. But so maybe the decision was, hey, look, Preveza's on the right, and they're starting to gain, and let's get away from them and hope for a shift. Maybe expecting them to gain more and be ahead, and you know, these guys all know what they're doing more than I do. So it's hard to say who's going to be right, but we can always see at the end of the race.
Well, Platoon is tacked off, and Quantum did not go with. So it looks like they're just defending against Azura altogether. And I think if you're happy to play that miniature numbers game the whole way through the week. As long as you've got your opponent behind you, then you keep them behind you, and maybe that's what they're doing. They're forgetting about the other boats that were in between. As long as they've got a zero behind them, that's the most they can do.
But it's
I
all
think hindsight might be 2020 here. They might realize that the right and keeping two numbers in there would have been better, but I think that's a hard call to make in the heat of the battle.
And that's and is that that equation? Are you looking at the regatta or the season? And in terms of the season, Platoon are their nearest rivals, or have they been up till this regatta? And so are Sled. Sled just now are a little bit of a lost cause as far as Quantum are concerned in this race. And as you said, Jen, credit to them. They won the 2 coastal races so far this season, and this is a longer race. It's not a coastal race, but certainly Sled have been the team which has really gained the most in this race. Allegra have led off the start line. But credit to Sled.
Maybe there's something in it about being able to stretch their legs, and that team seems to really like, or perhaps needs to settle in. Maybe they're not quite as confident sailing with each other yet, so just a tiny bit longer each jack or each drive allows them to get in the groove in a way that they can't do in the shorter races. I'm not sure.
So we're approaching the finish. Allegra and Sled just side by side. Sled slightly to leeward and behind. Allegra very much in control.
I would put to leeward and ahead, but it's to leeward enough that the bow ahead probably isn't enough.
No, of course,
Unless they're both sailing, in which case that'll be a very interesting finish indeed. But I do think that Sled will have to do 2 more attacks, whereas Allegra might not. They're definitely all. It is breezy enough for everyone to assume that my non-sailor friends who were watching the 52 recently in person, they called it the monkey position. They're like, what are they doing on the side of the boat when they're monkeying and they're reaching for their feet? And I was like, what they're doing is hoping they didn't eat too much lunch, because your stomach gets really uncomfortable when you're like that. But looking at Sled, everyone is hiking to the utmost right now, so I think they still think that there's something in it on that boat. And I mean, they're heads down, really reaching towards their feet like none of the teams have had out here so far. So it's that kind of that last moment when the tactician, it's like right up the starting line when the tactician says, give it your all, everybody. That's what they're doing right now as well. And I think it'll be hard to get past Allegra, but they haven't given up yet.
Yeah, well, just watching as these boats come to the finish. I mean, this is why we do the longer races, because we get to see beautiful shots like this, you know, with Cascais in the background, and you know, these guys. It's good, you know, not a bad job, I would say, to be able to come out here to a beautiful place and sail around in big boats and.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah, it's.
Have you discussed your career with your dad? Have you? He seems to do a good job.
Yeah, well, you know, we always make fun of him at home. It's like, oh, sorry, you got to go work over in
hard life,
you know, beautiful vacation venues. So
he said, "Hey, I pay the bills."
Right. So certainly, you know, as all these boats sort of lined up, I mean, they're probably not looking around thinking about how beautiful it is. Like Jenny said, they're looking at the keel, trying to get as much leverage and hike down on those boats as they can get.
Times when I was farm sailing August 31st, you start to count your shoe laces, you know, anything just to keep your mind off of how painful it is on your hips and your foot. And right now, this is like the breath of fresh air when the tactician calls tacking. You go, yes, I can give my legs a relief, and I can get off the side, and I can.
But you're just worried. That's a. You're just. You're just worried there's enough blood in your legs that you can walk across or run across the boat.
But so Sled.
Exactly.
It only happens about once a year.
Anyway, there we're watching. We've just watched Sled tack behind Allegra. Allegra and
right back the boat leg.
Yeah, and then tacking right back up on their hips. So, you know, only shot for them to pass, but unlikely. Allegra looks like they're going to be able to cross the finish line right here.
Yes, it does look like it. I was looking at the wrong mark. I was looking at the bottom at the gate mark. So Allegra's got the white mark. Actually, a beautiful lay line call from way back. Puts them right on the pin for the finish line, and Allegra was just a beautiful start to that race, to then be able to lead the whole way around. It was a phenomenal job for a team that already had a great day yesterday with 2-4. Was tied in the day yesterday with the third. I can't remember how they did in the first race, but they're kind of putting a stamp on it here today. We know how to play this race.
Allegra go 4-4-5-1, so that will take them on to 14 points, and there'll certainly be a solid third as they get to this finish line.
Yeah, well, Sled coming behind them, but Allegra, like we say, risky play, but they're going to be really feeling good, not just because of the race win, but also because they could execute that, and that's going to be a race they'll talk about for 10 years.
Right behind them, of course, Sled got the second place. A great first downwind, well, only downwind for Sled. That allowed them another good score. They had the third yesterday, and a good score this week. So Sled being able to pull off second over Luna Rosa, who had been in second before. Luna Rosa coming in to get third place. They're going to be happy with the podium position today. I mean, a third
One of the three.
Isn't on any score line. Yeah, so they'll take that, especially when they look back behind them and Quantum and Azura had dropped back so much. Now it looks like they haven't stayed dropped back. It's that Quantum will be crossing just behind and will be nipping into this fourth place position. So the question after Quantum, who hasn't quite crossed yet, but is about to, is
how far is Azura?
And get in between them and Azura, and it's going to be very, very close. I mean, just looking up from stern, Quantum's just crossing the line now for the fourth place. It looks like it's only about 4 boat lengths to Azura, but Revetta definitely crossing in at the committee boat where we are right now. So Azura is nabbing fifth, and Platoon, I think, is going to be crossing Azura on starboard here and will not have to tack. So, yeah, Platoon should be crossing into sixth. And there is still one more boat in the mix as well. So, Nick, your dad, Ed, is getting a little fight on as well for Azura. Azura's got it. Far side crossing at the pin. Azura just nipping. Phoenix crossing now.
So, Azura gets seventh.
It's Anda. So, Azura getting seventh, unfortunately for that team. Not nearly the race that they wanted it to be, considering Quantum was able to get all the way up to fourth.
Yep. So leaderboard would Quantum Racing would be on 10, Azura on 12, Allegra on 14.
Yeah, well, definitely a little bit of mix-ups there, huh? Jenny, do we know what happened to Azura? They rounded quite well, didn't they, in the top mark?
They rounded well at the top mark, and then on the downwind, there was some sort of battle, I think, between Quantum and Azura that took them, while everyone else dived back to the shoreline after the gate, the middle gate.
Yeah.
Azura and Quantum sort of just sailed out into that right corner on the downwind, and Azura lost out completely out of it. Quantum also lost out. Luna Rosa still sort of lost out, but they've been so close up in second that their loss into third was just a boat length loss rather than an actual boat placement loss. And that's why Sled made such a huge gate drive, and Preventa as well then judged, but they were way back. So I think it was just two of them. They were about the only boat on each other and sort of forgetting about the conditions of this race course, and that the left on the downwind does pay, especially if you're that far away from the course line.
So then overall then a pretty decent day for Quantum Racing, then just opening up a little bit of a lead on Azura. I think, as you say, as much due to Azura's downwind there. So there's the results of that race. First, Allegra, their third win of the season. Second, Sled, won both coastal races so far this season. A second for them in that long course 3 race. Third, Luna Rossa. Solid day for them with a 1 and a 3. Quantum Racing, fourth. Preveza, fifth. Platoon, 6th. Azura, 7th. Phoenix 8th, and Onda then in 9th. So Nick, a few words about that race format, or so let's look at the overall standings. As I said, Quantum Racing on 10, stepping 2 points clear of Azura. Allegra in third, a 6-point gap back to Luna Rossa in fourth. And then 3 boats all on 20 points. Luna Rossa Sled and Platoon, Pravetsa 23 in 7th, 8th is Phoenix on 29, and Onda on 33. Just before we finish then, Jenny and Nick, just a few thoughts on that race format. It's quite exciting, nice opportunities to open up a little bit.
Yeah, well, like we said through the whole race, it's a bit more about strategy than it was about tactics. And like Jenny was telling us, you know, boats like Quantum, Azura, maybe losing a little bit by focusing too much on the tactical situation and forgetting a little bit more about the strategy. So, you know, whereas teams like Allegre forgetting about the tactical situation at the starting line and getting down to that pin favor and just crossing everybody, totally strategic thinking and, you know, very well done by those guys. So it opens up the playing field a little bit. There's slightly more things to talk about.
Jenny, your thoughts on that format before we talk about tomorrow?
You know, we don't often give a VIP person of the day or a VIP move of the day, but I think the way that Nick just described it, the fact that that was a longer race, that it was a semi sort of short form coastal race, and that you really had to think big term strategy. I think we've just got to give sort of a round of applause for Allegre for their start and for doing what they did on the start with such cohesion and ability, and then nailing the rest of the way around the race course. And of course, Sled was able to then sort of do that by driving early at the gate mark and almost passing Allegre. But I think it kind of reminded us how the race course should be played, and I think those are thoughts to keep in mind as we look towards going forward through the week. And I'm sure a lot of the teams are reviewing the footage at night, and they'll see where they've made their little mistakes. But yeah, it is thinking about the bigger picture of the race course and not getting caught up in the little individual boat battles.
And your thoughts on tomorrow, Jenny, and the rest of the regatta? It's a little bit lighter wind pressure today. Still going to be quite a long week, isn't it?
Yeah, for my personal pleasure, if every day could be like today, I might just be a tiny bit drier when I get to shore. And I don't know if that makes you any happier, though, honestly. Yesterday was so glorious for ourselves and for the sailors that, yeah, if we could have 30 knots again, why not? So I think technically the actual forecast has Friday and Saturday super windy, and tomorrow might be a bit more like today. But as we saw today, makes it really tactical, really fun upwind. We know that when it's windy, we get them awesome whiteouts and some carnage with boats breaking and things like that. So I think anything can happen in whatever format we get. We know that we will probably get racing on time because there will be breeze all the days, and that's more than any sailor can ever ask for. So I'm pretty excited about it.
And I think, in particular, a great day for Andy Soriano, and huge confidence boost for them. They've had some dark days over the last couple of years. They've had some difficult times, but really hugely committed team, massive amount of experience on board, and well-deserved win today. And I'm sure they'll come ashore with big smiles, but they have to keep up that level to stay on the podium. And it's a very, very high standard in this fleet. So Nick, then looking forwards, Quantum Racing just with that little bit of a lead going into tomorrow. Azura have to come back tomorrow, don't they?
Yeah, well, you know, you can never expect the World Championship to be a
to be
runaway
easy
for anybody. And, you know, some teams are going to have better days and some teams are going to have worse days. And, you know, everybody's going to have the overall title in their vision, and so, you know, one bad day is not the end of the world. And
I think the key difference there is Azura are looking to this to kind of rescue their season in a way, and Quantum Racing, it's a cherry on the cake, as it were. Yeah,
well, definitely some different thoughts on board for the overall season, but also,
you know, in terms of the risk management, and Terry Hutchison's all about risk management, isn't he?
He is quite the numbers guy, but I would agree with him on this.
So that's our longer race and a nice win for Allegre. Join us again tomorrow in Cascais as the Rolex TP52 World Championships move into the third day. Join us for all the action and see you then.